This is the RPM Podcast, starring Scott Riggleman.
Here comes Scott Riggleman trying to fill that hole.
Tim Riggleman.
Holy crap. He's a freaking animal, by the way. He's got a hell of a pumper on that thing. He is a heck of a pusher. We're like a bulldozer.
And Josh Matthews.
Could you see yourself being a pool guy, though? The level of work seems ridiculous. Stupid.
And here we are again, the RPM Podcast, episode 174, May 18th, 2020. It is 7:06 p.m. We're starting right on time. That's pretty good for us. I'm Scott Riggleman down in Manchester, New Jersey. My brother Tim Riggleman is up in Farmingdale, New Jersey. Tim, how are you?
I'm good, ready to go. Thank you.
And Joshua Matthews, the producer and pretty much the owner of the show, is down in Waretown, New Jersey. Josh, how are you?
I don't have the coronavirus yet, so I'm going to say I'm good.
You're doing good. All right, we did have some racing going on this week with with NASCAR starting up again. But before we get to that, we still want to continue on with our local legends racing series. Tonight we have a special guest on. I was really looking forward to interviewing him. He had a long history at Wall Stadium. Before I introduce to you, I just want to tell you some of the stuff he did at Wall Stadium. He's also raced at other tracks, and we're going to get into that too. But he was the 1981 Wall Stadium Sportsman Champion. He was the 1986 Wall Stadium Modified Champion. He also won the Turkey Derby in 1986 and in 1987. He was a 1979 Sportsman Turkey Derby Champion. And in 1997, they split the Turkey Derby into 3 50-lap races, and he was able to win one of those 50-lappers then too. He has 31 modified wins. His first win was September 4th, 1982, and his last win was October 14th in the year 2000.
I'm just glad I have something in common with him.
Oh, you have a Turkey Derby win, right? But yours was a Consi, so I don't know if that really counts. That counts. Turkey Derby win's a Turkey Derby win. All right, and he went by the nickname, one of the coolest nicknames in racing, the Farmingdale Flyer, Tom Mauser. Hey, Tom, how are you?
Hey, I'm great. It's great to be here.
Yeah, just to let you know, I won a few Turkey Derbies in the old Arch Truck Series, and our producer, Josh, he has a consolation win in the factory stock division at Turkey Derby weekend. So we're all Turkey Derby winners here. My brother has Turkey Derby wins with John Blewett III being his spotter. So,
hey, checker flags are checker flags, right?
So in my eyes, we're all Turkey Derby champions on this show tonight. So that's all right, Tom, welcome to the show. We really appreciate you coming on. We're going to do what we did with everybody else. We want to start right at the very beginning of your racing career. Did the Mauser family racing start with you, or did your grandfather or father race? How did your family get involved in racing?
Yes, it was from my father. My father raced in the 60s, dirt racing. He had the number 3X, which was my first number. And he ran with Lee Taylor, and he was twin to Larry Taylor. And it was young Lee's father. Some of you guys might remember him.
Yeah.
And yes, my father had the cars.
Was he living in Farmingdale when he owned those cars?
Yes, we lived on the West Main Street next to, across from where the front end shop is now.
That's right. Yep, you guys lived over there.
Yes.
And that's where he kept the race cars?
Yes. And
was that before he started a family, or was that after he already had you guys?
It was after. I was born before the 60s. Just snuck in there.
So you remember those cars?
Yeah, my father had it was like a maroon 3X dirt car. There was some pictures around it through Facebook, and but in that car, I really, I was a little kid, and he had me help do things. My biggest thing was I wanted to ride it in it when he was loading it up on the trailer.
Every kid did.
Yeah, right. And it was alcohol, fuel injected, small block, and I can still remember the fumes in there, but I wasn't going to get it out. Right. None of us would exit over the fumes if it was running.
So even though he lived right in Farmdale, not far from Wall Stadium, he chose to own a dirt car? You said the car was a dirt car?
Yes. He always liked dirt a little bit better, but he still had the love for asphalt, because actually him and Bob Schultz, I believe it was the first independent car, and I think Ray Abraham had it on one of his TV shows. talking about that first, that number 12 blue car. My father and Bobby built that together.
Oh, really? And by saying independent car, you're talking about the front suspension?
Yes, I'm sorry. Independent front end suspension.
Yeah, I know, because back in the day, a lot of people were on the straight axles.
Yeah.
He ran the car on dirt. I'm assuming because he lived right in Farmdale. Did he run the car at East Windsor, or was he racing Flemington or Reading or anything like that?
He raced it. They did take the car to Reading, but tell you the truth, I don't remember who drove it. And my father was never a fan of that because of the that bank, and I've never seen. I just saw pictures and stories of it. And the inside around that track was like a dished out well for the water to go in, and it was pretty dangerous, and it would tear up your car.
Yeah, but more than tear up your car. I mean, Reading was very famous for a lot of drivers getting hurt, even killed there. Reading was a pretty dangerous racetrack altogether. So he mainly ran that car at East Windsor then?
Mostly Flemington and East Windsor.
Oh, wow. Hey, Flemington, that track was no joke either back then, so I'm surprised he went that route,
Flemington was cool, though.
Yeah.
Excuse me. I can remember stories on Sunday morning when I was a little kid. I'd go running out and see if the car was all together.
You knew they had a good night. If it was tore apart, you knew they had a bad night,
And then I would go running up and look on his dresser, because they always paid for like $100 bills, even if it was like $300 bills, or back then they were paying $1,000, $1,200 to win. And they won a few times, and I could remember seeing that money on the dresser, and I thought you could get anything in the world with that money.
You thought your dad was a millionaire after a night they won over at Flemington Speedway.
Sure was. And then, from there, they had the state fair at the Flemington racetracks. And I can remember my dad said, if we do good tonight, I'm going to have a surprise for you. So he came home with a mini bike for my brother and I one night.
Oh, really? So they must have been good, huh?
Yeah, from the fair, they were selling them up there. And
that's pretty cool.
And then the other things about Flemington, I don't know if my mom wanted me to go with him all the time, but I can remember he threw me in the back of the truck. And my father's an operating engineer, and he always worked on heavy equipment. And he used to throw me up in the back bed of the truck up against the cab, and I would drive all the way to Flemington in that, towing the race car. That wasn't bad, but the ride home sometimes was cold.
Yeah, it would get cold. It would be a nice ride up there. It would be nice and warm on a summer night, but then on the ride home, it always would get cold. You mentioned your dad was a heavy equipment operator, and that's how I remember him too. I remember he always drove a service truck, always had one of those Ford trucks with the dual wheels in the back and the utility body on it. I always remember him as a crane mechanic, right? He worked on cranes mostly?
He worked on everything. He retired from United Crane. He worked there a few years. And, growing up, everyone, Timmy and Scott and I, we grew up across the street from one another there for a long time on Edmonds Avenue. And I can remember you guys being little kids, and I'm sorry I'm off track there with you, but, but to go back to history of you guys, running around, coming over, looking at the race car with your dad. And I can remember one story of our first car. We were trying to get it ready to go to the races. We couldn't get the brakes working right. And your father came over and said, the master cylinder's airbound or something. And my father started working on that, and lo and behold, we made it to the track.
Yeah, that's good. Our street was actually pretty cool. Not only did my family, my father right across the street from me race, and then the Mausers were right across the street with race cars. Down the street around the corner, Walt Thiel, he had a monostock for a little while. And then at the very end of that street was Eddie Blewett, which was John Blewett's brother. And he always had like some type of like drag car and stuff like that. So, within a short street, we had like 4 or 5 families involved in racing.
And a few houses up the street was Ron Buck, Sr. and Jr.
Yeah, yep. Matter of fact, their shop was so close. When they used to help me scale the car, I would just drive it down there right on the street. And I would just drive out my dad's driveway. And my brother would ride his bicycle to the end of the street, and he would look up and down Belmar Boulevard to make sure there was no cops. And then he would wave me on, and I would drive right up Belmar Boulevard to Ronnie Buck's house. I don't know if you remember this or not, Tommy. I don't remember this. I only know because I found an old picture at my dad's house one time of Dick Barney's number 14 parked right next door to your house.
Oh,
yeah. he actually lived in the Baxter house. He rented the apartment there for a little while.
Yes, he did.
And
Yes, he
I
did.
showed him that picture, and I said, why was your car parked on Emmons Avenue? He's like, for a short while, I rented an apartment right there. But I'm not sure if the Mausers were living next door at the time. Were you guys living next door at the time when he was renting there?
My memory doesn't serve me that far back on that, but I can remember that house was my grandmother's at one point. So it was either my grandmother's or my mom and dad did buy that from my grandmother.
Okay.
So it was right around that time. I do remember him and that race car from that house being inside and out. Yes. So I would say I think we did live there then. Yes. Yes, we wanted to get off Main Street, and my grandmother, we lost our grandfather, who I was really close to, and my grandmother was getting older and needed some assistance, so my dad bought a house from her and built a mother-in-law suite in there for her.
Yeah, I remember that too. All right, Tom, I remember you guys buying the house across the street from us, moving there. I'm sure you moved there before me and Tim were born, but I remember the house not having a garage at all. And I remember you guys building a nice garage back there. Did you guys build that solely for the race cars?
Yes. My father, went ahead and built an oversized 2-car garage, and it was a nice, clean shop. And we had a wood-burning stove in there for the heat in the winter time. And a lot of great memories over there from different friends and racers coming by. Kaz, the painter, used to come over and paint our cars, and it was great to meet him and see he's still doing well and still doing some work. Robert Peter Cosgrove. He told me I would never remember his name if he told it to me.
And I'll tell you a quick funny story from me and Tim being kids. When he would sign his name on your race cars, he would sign Kaz on it, like Kaz lettered it. But the way he lettered it, the font he used, it looked like it was 605. It didn't look like a COS. Me and Tim used to always wonder, what's 605 on all these race cars, But then as we got older, we learned that it was the guy's name. It was Kaz that lettered all the race cars back then. You always said Kaz would be over there lettering your cars. Another exciting thing I remember, too, I remember sitting home on the couch one day, and this guy pulled up, I think it was in an El Camino or something. He had this brand new engine, modified engine in the back of the car, and it was actually Macbeth's. Macbeth's was delivering you an engine one time, and I always thought that was cool that guy, I always heard that name Macbeth's when I was a kid.
Yeah.
It was so cool that John Betts pulled up to deliver you an engine one day.
Oh, yeah. That's true. I remember he did have he personally had an El Camino, because I had one also.
Yeah, that's right. You had an El Camino. I remember he pulled up with an El Camino and had a brand new motor, and he was bringing you guys an engine. That's how close I used to pay attention to what was going on across the street.
You got one memory there. You got
my finest memory of that shop, getting ahead a little bit, but is when the Chassis Dynamics car showed up in there. That was a big day for me.
Was it? Yeah, it was a big day for me too.
Right, before we get to that, we are getting a little ahead. What year did your father stop racing with a driver, and when did you first start racing for your father as the driver, not just helping him as a mechanic?
Yeah, I started, and you said my first race win was 1981. It was really 1979. That was my rookie year in Sportsman division, and we were fortunate enough to win that year.
Yeah, no, I said your first championship was 1981.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, 1981 was your Wall Stadium Sportsman Championship, and your first win was 1979. Well, in 1979, you won the Sportsman Turkey Derby.
Okay. Well, you're going to correct me a lot more than that. So.
But going back, Tim just mentioned that he thought it was a cool day when a brand new Chassis Dynamics car showed up at your shop. I remember way before that, a white Vegas showed up with a gold number 3X on the side, and it was on an open trailer. Where did that car come from?
Yeah, that was a Hank Dudley car. That was the 15. Yeah, and he was really quite an innovator, engineer design. That car had some really different systems on it. Before I bought that car from him, that car had independent rear end suspension, and Wall wouldn't let him drive it. And
really?
So we had a hollow tubed Hellebrandt rear in that car with bird cages Think about that on an asphalt car way back in 1970s.
Way ahead of his time.
And he had all Coney shocks on the car, and he had the double adjustable Coney shocks.
Mm-hmm.
He had inboard cantilever front end,
like an Indy car.
Yeah, it was the transmission. It didn't have like a real like a typical shifter on it. He had a bar system that came across it, and when it locked in high gear, it locked in, and he had like a handbrake off a bicycle that you would have to pull it out of gear, out of high gear. So he was really, he was really a crafty guy. And we had a lot of, that car was chrome moly tubing, all TIG welded together. We actually offset that car. I think it was first or second year that we drove that. My father offset that, put the driver on the left side, me, and we had a good time with that car. I learned a lot.
The first day I seen it show up across the street at your house, it already had the 3X on it. Was that car somewhere else before it came to Emmons Avenue, or did they have it lettered before they bought it to you, or was it already had the 3X on it when you got it?
I think that car was in the garage before you saw it, and we took it out, and Schreiber, was it? Or Royce, or somebody over there in the back street of Farmingdale behind Jim Moore's place. There was a paint a line, a letterer back there.
Oh, okay.
And I can't remember the guy's name. I can see his place, and
but he came over and lettered it for you.
I believe that. Well, it's the half truth. How about that?
Now, when you got that car from Hank Dudley, did you buy it with an engine and everything, or did you put a Sportsman engine in it?
Yeah, actually, we bought that car. Johnny Lors, it was around, he married my father's sister, so he's my uncle. And what a racing career he had. But he was driving, he was driving that for Roger Jones. Boy, my brain's really going back, Scotty. Roger Jones, and they were running at it as a modified, and then I actually bought it from them. So it went from Hank Dudley to Roger Jones to me.
Okay. Did you get it with a motor or without a motor?
Without a motor.
Okay.
Our first motor we had, my father's brother, Uncle Ralph, up on Howell Road, which housed race cars, mine and other ones, and at my Uncle Elsie's and Aunt Pat's was Scott McLaren. His mom and dad, we ran cars out of there. But my uncle had an old 302 engine, and he had it all wrapped up, and he was waiting for it for someone that needs it for a race car. And he gave it to me and my dad, and we took it down to Hageman's, and we put SPS rod bolts in it. I think we did a couple things to the heads, and we used that was our first year race car engine. It was like a
302 Ford motor?
No, it was a 302 Chevy.
Oh, wow, those motors are worth some money. They were kind of rare, the 302 Chevy motors.
Yeah, with the pink rods. And
Yeah, they were good motors. They came in Z28 Camaros. A lot of people don't know that Camaros came with a 302 engine in them, the Z28s, and they were a pretty desirable engine.
Yes, they were.
And another thing I always heard about Johnny Lors, too, towards the end of Johnny Lors' and of his career of owning race cars, I was lucky enough to drive for him too. And I enjoyed racing with Johnny. He was a great guy. He really just truly loved watching his car go around that racetrack. And he was very supportive of me. And he, like, when you first asked me to drive that car, I was a little hesitant to drive for him. I actually talked to my dad and mom about it because they knew Johnny. And I said, Johnny Lors asked me to drive his modified. What do you guys think? And the thing that made me say yes is my mom just looked at me. She's like, you know what? Johnny's a great guy. He's always had beautiful race cars. And that's exactly what she said. And it was a beautiful race car. So I'm like, I'll drive for the guy, and he was a lot of fun to race with. Another thing I heard about Johnny Lors back in the day, even Dick Barney told me this, and you mentioned it just before, that your dad's dirt car had fuel injection on it. They said Johnny Lors was one of the first guys that could really figure out fuel injection around here. He used to help a lot of people set the fuel injections up on their race cars.
I got a little story on that. My cousin Scott McLaren, when he was racing up at East Windsor, we had a fuel injection system on that, and we couldn't get it going right. And I talked to Jim Hageman, and we were over at Hageman's, and we had it on a dyno, and Uncle Johnny Lors came over. We call him Uncle Smiley, right? And that was his nickname, Smiley. And he came over to Hageman's, because we're his nephews, and he was snooping around, and he was showing us that I think we had the pill in backwards or one of the lines, and he sniffed that out in like 2 seconds.
Yeah.
He was.
That's why he was able to win so many races back in his day and a sportsman championship. He just knew how to set up a fuel injection a lot better than most people could, And I always thought that was pretty cool about that, And even today, when I see him, he can still rattle off stuff that he used in his fuel injection systems and stuff like that. And he still has the formula in his head to make fuel injection work. Unfortunately, we don't use it anymore. We use carburetors now, but he was really good with the fuel injection. So you first started racing. I know you had an older brother, Bus, and you had a younger brother, Johnny and Greg. Why were you the one that started racing? Why didn't Bus race? Why didn't Johnny race? Why were you the one did you want to race, or did your dad just pick you out of all?
Great question. Yeah. My father wanted one of his kids to race for sure, because when I was a little younger, my brother, Bus, was getting out of high school. My father went and bought that sedan, that Roaring 20s, white car. Do you remember that car at all?
That was before me.
And there were some names there. I know something you don't know about race cars. Mark that down, Joe. So so my father bought that car, and then my brother didn't want to drive it. He decided he was going to go to school, whatever, and the reasons it never showed up. And I can remember saying, "I'll drive it. I'll race it. I'll drive it." Yeah. You think you can race? It's a lot harder than it looks, And I said, no, I'm telling you, I could race at that. So, which segues right into how did I get my first race car? I told my dad, hey, I'm going to go buy a motorcycle, and I didn't want you to flip out over it. And he goes, well, would you rather have a motorcycle or a race car? And I said, race car. So he goes, good, because I know where there's one. And now we're going to go get the car we just described.
So the very first thing you raced was a sportsman?
Yes.
You never did like the go-kart thing as a kid or anything like that? Race motorcycles or anything like that?
Oh, yeah, we had dirt bikes and stuff, but we never raced as on dirt race tracks or anything. We just ran full bore around behind my grandmother's gas station there in Farmingdale out in the field, which I'm sure you've been out there.
I think you can't underestimate the impact of dirt bikes and things like that, because that does involve feeling what the vehicle's doing, throttle control, all that. And that does translate. Not directly, but it does translate as far as knowing what the vehicle's doing and how you respond to driving a race car.
Sure.
And we're starting to see a pattern too. Everybody that we have on kind of always had dirt bikes before they started racing. As a kid, it's the first thing you can do. You can ride dirt bikes with your friends out through the woods. So, Doug Walcott raced motorcycles. Doug French, raced motorcycles. So we're starting to see a lot of the modified guys at Old Stadium started, because back then they didn't have the quarter midgets and the go-karts like they do now. So a lot of these guys just started out riding dirt bikes in the gravel pits, and then they moved on to the race cars.
Sure. Well, Johnny Lord.
I remember that Vega 3X, and then I remember it got a little fancier the next year or the 2 years after. It started having a blue and orange number with the stars in it. Was that the same car, or was that a different car?
That was the same car.
And that's after you offset it and lowered it down and everything?
Yes, that car actually that was a 3x3 chassis, which everyone back then did a 4x2. And Lou Coleridge was the inspector, and he came over and he said, Bill, this is, it has to be 4 inches or whatever the heck the rule was. And they talked about it. And I can remember my father and he was out there, and he welded a 1/2-inch bend on the whole bottom of the cage, or of the frame rather.
How to make it 4 inches? He added on to what was already there?
Yeah. So, and I do remember that. Yeah, that was a little bit different car.
So you raced that car for a while in the sportsman division. Did you ever turn that into a modified, or did you sell it and then buy something to move up to the modified division?
Yeah, we actually, I did not race that car in the modified. We sold that car to Everett Seaman after, if you remember Rod Cunliffe, the 45, Charlie McGill. Charlie is, and Billy, great friends, great memories with those guys. We're such a team. Rod had probably outside of Vinnie Green's accident, right? And maybe a couple other ones. Rod came down the back straightaway and the clutch blew out of it, and he skidded up and he hit that point at the end of third turn and broke that car literally in half. I
remember that. I remember seeing pictures of that.
Yeah, and then Charlie and Billy went back. They said, "We're gonna," they're racers, man, and we built so many things over there, and they went back and built a brand new car, and then Rod didn't want to continue on racing with that, and somehow through friendships and stuff, I ended up buying the car, and Charlie always said to me, he goes. Or I always said to Charlie, I said, "You never sold this car. You just got a sponsor." And so we raced the 45 Sportsman car. Randy was telling me, I think we won 4 or 6 races in a row at the beginning of the year in that car. And we won the championship with it that season. And then you got another question for me about that one?
Yeah. So that was my next question. So you went from driving a 3X to the number 45. I was curious where the number 45 comes. So that was basically Rod Cunliffe's number and Charlie McGill's number. Yes.
And I think, and that was called the 45 Special, the Elizabeth. That was Charlie's wife, Billy's mom. We called her Betty, but her name was Elizabeth. Yeah.
That's where the number 45 came from?
Yes. That's correct.
So people know Rod Cunliffe was the guy that owned the cabin for many, many years. So that was his tie in to racing, and a lot of racers used to go to the cabin after races. The owner of the cabin used to race before Tommy started driving that car.
Yeah, he's another great guy. Yeah.
But now, whatever, I know somewhere along the lines in there you sold a Vega to Kevin Ayers. Was that the car you sold to Kevin Ayers?
Yes, that is the car.
Because Kevin also ran that car for a while, and he ran very good in that car, too.
Yes, that was, after the championship year, Kevin bought that car, and Bobby Thomas was with him when they came over, and they were looking at it, and, I remember that day it left, it kind of broke my heart.
Yeah. You sold it complete, right? Motor and everything, right?
I believe so. Yeah. Yes, we did. Complete, yes.
So that's when you were done with the sportsman and you move on to the modified division. I remember you starting out with a white and blue car. It was a beautiful car. It reminded me of something like Jeff Bodine had. It was Tim, was that the chassis dynamics car you were talking about?
Yes. Yeah.
Where did that car come from? Chassis Dynamics is a very famous builder up in the Connecticut area. A lot of the cars run that Stafford and Thompson or Chassis Dynamics car. We're down here. A lot of the cars are Evans cars and Troyer cars. What made you decide to go that route and buy a Chassis Dynamics car?
Well, that car, if you remember, that car was Jeff Bodine built that car for himself, and it had some nice aerodynamic points to it. And the way that the frame and the roof and things were laid out. And that was actually a Don Ling car. Okay. And Don Ling sold that to me, and he helped me out with that very much. And because Tommy Comerford, who drove for him, he was operating engineer too, and he was good friends with my dad. And that's where that deal came about.
Was that the Don Ling car that had that big scoop on it?
Yeah, I believe it was. I do. I'm not 100% sure because Don had a few of them.
Yeah, he'd always bought Chassis Dynamics cars from up in the Stafford area and brought them down this way.
He was a great Bodine fan and supporter of them.
Yeah,
he actually bought one of those original cars that he built. and he gave it to Jeff Bodine as a gift.
Yeah, I remember you driving that car, and you won pretty much right away with that car. I remember you getting a feature win in that car, and you did run that car for several years. When did you switch from the chassis dynamics car over to the McGill chassis cars?
Well, we raced with hard work. We didn't race with a lot of money. And I always said that we could build a better car. And I still feel that way in some aspects of it, right? And Billy, we had a jig. We were building different chassis over at McGill's. Well, I don't know how many chassis he's actually built. I mean, if you remember the 002 Eddie Bone,
Yeah.
so
Geibel, built one for Ed Geibel.
Geibel. I think Charlie Kremer Sr. has one of the McGill cars with. We were playing with the torsion bars from the dirt cars.
That car he had, he actually since sold it. They ran it as a sportsman car, and that was set up for both. That was set up for torsion bars in the rear and coilover shocks and springs in the back.
I always liked that idea.
I think Mario Fiore ended up with that.
Really?
Yeah, because when John drove for Mario, we went up there. There was a car up in the rafters, and John asked what that was. He goes, "I don't know. Some guy in New Jersey built it. Some Bill McGill. I bought it from Charlie Kremer."
That was it then.
Yeah.
So I always loved to build and work on my own stuff. And with Billy McGill, and we all had the same mindset of building our own and winning races. And we had such a good team and help from, all the local Farmingdale boys, Keith Tanay. He worked on us every night. Randy Goss came and joined with us then. That's when Randy and I started working together about that time frame. And Billy and Charlie McGill were just great people and great racers also, and very talented and crafty people. And
I know those chassis were beautiful. I mean, they were very well designed, and the workmanship was second to none on those cars. They were beautiful race cars.
And we used
dynamics car. Did you sell that chassis dynamics car to the Grattans? I remember he had a car similar to that.
Thank you. I couldn't remember where that went. Yeah.
That turned into the Orange 30, right?
That's what Jim Hoffman used to tell Jim. Get Tom Mauser to drive the car. Get Tom Mauser to drive the car. And Jim was such a great guy. And Betty and Billy and Bobby and geez, great memories there too. And I can remember our first win, Jim holding this trophy up, and he goes, "This took me this much and this much money to win this first race."
Everybody adds it up when they finally win their first trophy. So your chassis dynamics car gets sold to the Grattan family. You drove it for the Grattans?
No. Let me think how that happened. We sold this CD car to Grattans and Billy moved up to modifieds from Sportsman, I think. Or they did Sportsman. I think he did go modified with that car. And then he painted it up his own, the family colors and raced with it.
Orange 30. So you sold that car to the Grattans, and then over that winter, you built a car with the McGills, right?
Correct.
Was that a complete whole design of yours, or did you take the chassis dynamics car and make a jig, and then you just built it with that, or was that a complete design that you thought of?
It was our own design. It was definitely our own design. We had some way that things worked. I wanted the A-frames to be exact locations. I mean, we spent time. I think we built bump steer gauges and Ackerman steering things before they were popular, And we used to spend so much time. I remember Billy and I were sitting out on the right front wheel on the bump steer in that car. We made it was less than 100 thousandths bump out, and we had the left front bumping out 3/8 of an inch.
Well, that's good. That helps you turn in the center of the corner.
Yeah, and we were, these are the things that we played with constantly.
All right, we did mention the car that Charlie Kramer had. He kind of got stuck with that car a little bit because what happened there is he drove Eddie Bone's backup car one night, and he said the thing was the fastest race car he ever drove. He said but something happened to the fuel pump. He said he could have easily won that night, but the fuel pump went bad, or the fuel hose sucked closed, or something like that. Whatever, it was starving for fuel. But as soon as he got out of that car, he went over to McGill and says, "I want one of those chassis," and he ordered one.
Right.
Unfortunately, that was the '91 season when the modifieds went on strike, and that car sat in their shop for like 15 years until Charlie Kremer III bought it back out and made a great sportsman out of it. But the Kremers, they like the arms in the back and the torsion bars in the back, I should say, over the coil springs. Did you have the coil spring shocks in the back of yours, or did you have those torsion bars?
No, we had coilovers. We did.
Did you ever try it with the torsion bars?
No, I didn't.
No.
And I was the one that wanted
to. Is that an Eddie Bone thing?
Yes. Eddie built that car. Had that car built with Billy and him, and with Tom Skinner, obviously, right?
Now, another thing that the Bones had a little bit different than you, or maybe not, you can tell me. The Bones were famous for that car too, because they were one of the last modifieds ever that had a steering box in their car instead of the rack. Did you run a rack, or did you run a steering box?
I ran a rack, but we had all the mounts, and because of the cost of running racks and the strength of it, Eddie wanted to run the steering box, and we built a few mad cars with the Pitman arm rack steering box up in the left front, and then we built all that geometry up into those cars. I remember all those. Yes,
another cool thing about him running that steering box. He said he liked it too because of wall. You can bang wheels with it a little bit where the racks were breaking back then. Because back then they didn't have the fancy sweet racks. Back then they were using Pinot and Fairmont racks,
right?
And they weren't that strong. I mean, they were great for turning and everything, but they weren't that strong. He liked having the steering box because he can bang wheels a little bit, and if the toe got knocked out, you can at least still keep racing.
Yeah, you'd still finish, right?
Yeah. And another funny thing, too, is when he had the steering box in it, now he had a lot more room for the radiator. The radiator, Eddie Bones cars were huge because he had so much room because, the rack wasn't in the way of the radiator, so he could run a bigger radiator and the motor stayed cooler and stuff, It was pretty cool that you guys kind of ran modifieds at the same shop, but they were a little bit different,
Oh, yeah, definitely. Well, Eddie, he never had the radiator, I believe, up in the front of the
right,
cross. He always, because Tom Skinner was, you guys are crazy running that out there.
Yeah. Another thing, Eddie Bone used to tell me, he used to drive him crazy. Tom Skinner would never let him go to a
dry sump
system. Like when you guys were running the dry sump system, you guys can lower your motors down. He always had to run an oil pan, wet sump system, keep his motor up high,
That was one thing that Eddie knew it hindered him. And, but, hey, money, money's money, right? To run a sump pump, it was thousands of dollars difference for the oil lines and the pan and the dry sump tank and the 3 or 4 stage pump. And, you got to race with what you got, right?
I was just curious because you both ran out of McGill shop with the chassis and stuff, but the cars were built different. Did Eddie Bone ever take your car out, or did you ever take Eddie Bone's car out to see what the difference were in them?
No. Back then, everybody was, frenemies, more or less. I don't know if it's a great word, but everybody kept their cards close to their chest, and everybody kind of did what they wanted. Just to go back, though, I remember why Eddie and Tom Skinner didn't put an oil pump on, now that we're talking about it. Tom Skinner never liked that external pump drive, the belt.
Oh, right. Yeah, because the belt can break.
Yeah. So somewhere's in there, Eddie, I'm sorry, there's what the real story is. So choose one.
Yeah. But it was a disadvantage because when you went to the dry sump system, you could lower the motors down in the car and get them a lot lower, and that would help on a small track like that.
Any track that would help. CG is important, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Now, were your cars ever at McGill's shop at the same time? Was there ever a time where your 45 was in there and his 54 was in there?
Well, actually, the last car that he built we were building it for me. And that car had a little bit lower. We were trying to keep the roll cage, the sidebars down a little bit lower.
Okay.
And we were trying to do some different things. And then Eddie wanted a car. And that happened to me a few times. Billy and I would build myself a car and someone else came and bought it.
Yeah. Another thing I noticed about your modifieds when you ran the McGill cars that you did a little bit different than a lot of other people was back then a lot of people were running the wide 5 hubs. You chose to run the narrow 5 hubs, like the Grand National style hubs. Why did you go that route?
Just because it was made from an aluminum billet, it was so much stronger. I know you gave up. It was a little bit, the strength of it was just so strong. And I know the wheels, you gave back a little bit on the wheels, but for the weight.
Yeah, because now you have a full center.
Yeah, but
where the lug nuts go, where the wide 5 just has the little tabs coming off.
And I was friends with Vaughn Jr. From Winners, and he used to. We used to talk a lot, and he would have different things that he had, and we just I just went with it. I just wanted to be a little bit different, and I just wanted to have that. I was comfortable with the way they were made.
Didn't the chassis dynamics cars have the narrow 5 hubs too? Didn't Jeff Bonine run the narrow?
Now that you're saying it, yes, they did. Because remember Jeff used to put that skinny late model left front on for Thompson? Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that was...
I always thought that maybe that was a carryover from when you raced the chassis dynamics car. You liked the narrow 5 hubs, and you just bought that over when you guys designed your own chassis and built the McGill chassis.
Yeah, probably, yes. It probably did spark that knowledge of that different, and that's probably why I stayed with it. But I did like them.
All right, so you had that car, you ran at Wall. I remember you were one of the, back in the day, it was very popular. Everybody would run Wall. And the 2 other racetracks they always tried to make, they always tried to go to Pocono for the Race of Champions on the 3/4 mile track. And I remember everybody used to try to go down to Martinsville, and I remember you going down there as well. How did that McGill chassis work at those other tracks?
You were just talking. I've been to Poconos with Linus Johnson, a great friend of mine.
I remember that on the 2.5 mile track. He didn't go very fast in his time trial. I remember that.
But we went, right? And,
yeah, you were there. You were there.
Yeah, and it was some time. And but Linus always used, every time we went somewhere, he used to drive us. He used to drive our truck and trailer for us. And going to Poconos, the car, my first time there.
He was a truck driver for a living, right? He drove truck for a living, right?
Yes, he did. And I can remember going to Poconos. We won a couple, I think we won 2 or 3 Pocono qualifiers, and had one taken away. I remember them more than the ones that
so you had a guaranteed spot to go up there by winning a Pocono qual.
And I can remember we qualified well. We ran very well. I was very comfortable. The car was stable. Everything worked well. And I can remember I started like up in the 20-some area, and I worked my way all the way up to like 12th spot. And I was picking off cars, and I'm thinking, man, this is easy. This is easy. You just follow the car and stay on the gas a little bit longer and move around them. And I got up to about there, and then the tires started wearing. And
that's why everybody else was taking the lead.
Yeah, and it was great learning experiences there, and so I was always comfortable there. And when we went to Martinsville, the car ran well too.
Didn't you? I remember going to Martinsville with Jerry Conner to watch you race down there, and I think you won a heat race or something. Did they have heat races back?
Well, it wasn't a heat race; it was a qualifying race.
Okay.
So, and yes, I won a qualifying race, and that was pretty cool. Talking about that race, Charlie J. Jarzombek was always a hero of mine, right? And who doesn't like Charlie, right? Mm-hmm. And I can remember I got a hold of him years ago at Pocono, and I cornered him where he had to talk to me. And so we were talking, and then through the when I won that qualifying race at Martinsville, Charlie J. came all the way across the pits, came all the way to the back of my car, and he pointed at me and he gave me a thumbs up and he walked away. And that was quite a moment for me.
Yeah, Josh, you got to understand back then when he would go to Martinsville and Pocono with the modifieds, that was like the Daytona 500s of the modifieds.
Right.
And like he said, he started like 20 something and got up to 12, and that's huge because he used to start 55, 56 cars, you know. So and it was the best all over the country. I mean, not only the guys from New England, the guys from out in upstate New York, Pennsylvania. You would even have guys like Sacharoli come up from the South, Ray Hendrick, guys like that. So he was racing with the best of the best, you know.
Well,
when you won that qualifying race down in Martinsville, do you know if you had the McBetts engine then, or was that with a Hegeman motor?
No, that was at that time that was a McBetts motor.
How did you choose what engines you would use back then? Like, you know, I knew you were with Hegeman for a while and you were with McBetts for a while. I just wondered how you picked and choose what engines you were going to use that season.
Well, through everything revolves around how much money you have, right?
Yeah, what deals are out there, right?
Yeah. And Jim Hageman, I love the guy, like unbelievable guy. He taught me so much about life and engines. And, you know what? I could have never raced any of those early years and stuff without Jim. And, you know, we did trade-offs. He taught me things. I helped him. He helped me. And we could afford to go racing. And then even with his, I can remember my father and I bought him a flow bench as just something that he needed, right? And that we always wanted. And it was such a big event for us to do that. But anyway, you know, like good friends, sometimes you fall apart and for some reason or another. And Art Peerless was a sponsor from Mustang Gas and Oil, who he made a commercial with us. If you remember.
I got that on my list. We're going to get to that.
Okay. So Art Peerless came, and what a great guy. I'm still friends with him on Facebook. And he came up and he bought us that engine from McBetts. And a funny story with that, he knew Tom Durkin. He was in the oil business, and he had some land or whatever his story was there. And he knew Tom Durkin. And one night with her, we'll save that one. But Art Peerless from Mustang Gas and Oil sponsored us along with other great sponsors. Funtown, Norcas.
Now that we mentioned your sponsors, I do have a list of sponsors because you did have some pretty cool sponsors over the years. 3 of them come to my mind, not including Jerry Connor. We're going to get to Jerry too. But
sure.
The first one I always thought was cool is you had Welsh Farms on your car. Everybody loved Welsh Farms ice cream back then.
Sure.
And Welsh Farms was also on Tony Siscone's car. How did you get Welsh Farms sponsor? And was it the same Welsh Farms deal that Tony Siscone had, or was it separate Welsh Farms?
Nope, it was the same company. I actually started, this all came from Art Madge, if you remember Art.
He lived on the corner over there, right there on the other side of 195?
Yes, that was Art.
Did he own that Welsh Farms right there?
Yes, that was his family, his wife's.
Tim,
actually,
you know what I'm talking about, right? Right by Quick Walls, the Welsh Farms that's closed now and still sitting there?
Yeah. The Welsh Farms is closed, and you're talking about the shop that Shannon Connor burnt down.
Josh, if you're ever coming from Barney's Garage in Lakewood and you're going towards Farmingdale,
Okay.
before you get to 195, on the right-hand side, there's a closed-down Welsh Farms dairy right there. It's still there. It still has like an old payphone in front of it and everything. That's the Welsh Farms Tommy's
I didn't
talking
really,
about.
actually, that was Edgewood Dairies.
Was it?
Yeah.
That thing's been closed since I was a kid.
Yeah, and Welch Farms bought that, and they moved it to another dairy in Old Corley's Avenue in Neptune, New Jersey.
I think there's still a Welsh Farms sign in front of that building too. That one that's sitting right there.
Condos now. I believe it was all condos.
No, the one over by Blewett's Junkyard. I think there's still a Welsh Farms sign on the side of that building.
I'm sure there could be. I think Welsh Farms, as you said, that was advertised on there. They started selling that milk out of there. But Art Madge was the guy that really pulled all that together, and how these thin threads of contacts and knowing different people. Art Madge was over telling my dad, "Man, I got to find somebody that wants to work. I can't find kids to work and all this stuff." And my father told me that, and the next week he introduced me to Art, and he told me, "Come on over on Monday morning and see me." And I went over, and he hired me, and that's how.
That's how you got the ice cream business.
Yeah, that was exactly it.
I don't know how much money Welsh Farms gave you and gave Tony Siscone, and it's none of my business, but they were the coolest sponsor at the racetrack because I don't know how much money they gave you guys, but they gave you plenty of stuff to hand out. I mean, I've never seen a sponsor hand out so many T-shirts, hats, jackets, cups. I mean, me and my brother, every day in school, me and my brother wore something that said Welsh Farms on it.
Yeah. Do you have any of the ice cream scoops left? I still have one.
What? No, a scooper? No, they gave out scoopers?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
No, I never got one of them.
Yeah, that was Art. And Art and Dickie Barney were friends for years also. And Art used to go racing all around. He used to go to back in the Cup series. He went to, what was it? It was Daytona, Rockingham, Richmond, right? The three first races of the year. And he go to all of them. And Randall Reed's father, he used to go with him to Reed's side farm who race cars. So, yeah, that's where that sponsor came from. So they not only sponsored my race car, they employed me.
But another cool thing that happened, your cars were white and blue for a little while. And then one year, and Tony Siscone had a red car, and his red car had Welsh Farms over it. Then you showed up one year with a green car with Welsh Farms over it. Why did you switch to the color green?
Welsh Farms colors. Art man wanted me to do it.
Because a lot of people know in racing, you don't want to drive a number 13. Green's a bad luck color in racing. And Tommy shows up in an all green modified, and everybody's like, he's nuts, man. But I remember that on that car, because everybody was superstitious about the green color, that you wrote "The Witch is Dead" on it, and I always thought that was saying that
I can't believe your knowledge of racing. But honestly, that was not mine. That was Kaz himself.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and when Kaz was painting that, we wanted everything perfect for him and all up in the air just the way that he wanted it.
Right.
And
no Nerf bars on it, stuff like that.
Yeah,
so
he comes, I got to get this car done. And, he's working very friendly, Kaz, and a friendly guy. And all of a sudden he was gone. His wife was giving birth to us. Like, I have a lot of children like I do. I have blessed with 5 children. And Kaz, I think he has more than 5. And his wife was pregnant and he left. He didn't come back for a day and a half. We didn't know what happened.
Wow.
But that was The Witch is Dead. I asked him, why'd you do that? And he goes, I don't know. It just seemed like the right thing to do.
I always thought it was like a superstitious thing, like, because the green color kind of reminded people of like a green witch, and that was the bad luck. And so I thought he put with The Witch is Dead on it to say that, this car is not bad luck because it's green.
He did that so small. 99 out of 100 people would never even notice that, Scott.
Wasn't it by like the cowl piece where your windshield was, by your gauges? Wasn't it up there?
No, I believe it was on the top of the wheel well on the left rear.
Oh, okay. I knew it was by the driver somewhere and just said real small, "The Witch is Dead." I just remember always seeing that as a kid, and I thought it was because the superstition, was gone. You'll be fine driving a green race car,
Yeah, that was because.
How did you do in that green race car? Because that was short-lived. I don't even think you ran that car for a season.
Well, that was the CD car, right?
Yeah, that was the end of the CD car, right? That was the last time you had the CD car?
Right. And I just, I wanted to move on. I had my own ideas going back, and I just wanted to build my own car again. It was, when we race, we race so hard, and we spent so much time, dedication to everything. And sometimes when you look at things and you don't like them, you just want to move on and make it different. And that was our main thought. And what to do.
My brother knew you guys worked hard because you guys were out in that garage every night. Even when you guys would set the timing in the car, they'd fire that engine up, Josh, and would rattle the windows in our house, and talking about Kaz coming over there and lettering it, back in the day, that was like an event. When you got your race card lettered, it's not like nowadays. Now they come over with vinyl stickers, slap them on, and they're gone. That was like an event. The letterer would come over. He'd be there for like a day, 2 days sometimes, lettering these cars by hand. And the crew couldn't touch the cars those nights because the letterer was lettering. Everybody used to just hang out and watch the guy letter the car. I always thought it was cool when somebody got their cars lettered back then.
Now, how often after you got them banged up or scraped up did that get touched up and redone because, like you said, now they can just slap a new thing of vinyl on. Or
a lot of times they would leave paint behind and a couple of brushes. This way, if it did get scratched up, you can just touch it up yourself. You know what I'm saying? That's what I used to do.
I don't remember ever scratching any body panels.
Well, modifieds were different. They had big Nerf bars on them and stuff. I didn't have the luxury of having big Nerf bars. We had to actually bang fenders and doors.
Memory, yeah.
But I mean, later on, you had another famous letter your race cars. Not only did he letter your race car, he was also your crew chief. How did you hook up with Mikey Clayton?
You know, geez, I got chills. You know, just thinking about him. You know, Mikey, he worked so hard. He was a pivotal person in our pit crew, and he used to yell at me. There was one guy that used to tell me what I needed to do, and it was usually around money. And
he wasn't a yes man. He would tell you how it was.
He would. I could tell you, we had number 3 steel brake lines all through the car. I was so proud of them. Right. I spent all this money on it. We had all number 3 brake lines all through the car, and about 2/3 of the way through the race, my pedal would get soft, and I'd start losing the pedal. And the second week we went back, we were bleeding the brakes out, and we thought everything would be all right. And again, it started again. Well, he told me I got to take that expensive chrome-looking stuff off the car and put steel brake line on. I said, no, this has to work. It's 2,500 pounds, 3,000 pounds of pressure is rated for. We're not that high. Well, I get to the racetrack again, and it did. And I came home from work on that Monday. He had all that shit ripped out of the car.
Did the brakes work when you went back with the cheaper brake line?
Yes, it was that. Yeah. So, you know, Mike, he did the lettering, and he's the one that I always liked John Blewett's, you know, the red, white, and blue look, how he had it upgraded in that car, but you can never duplicate what the Blewetts did. You know, Grandpa, there's another guy to help me get racing. My father and him were good friends, and he helped me with a lot of components. When John Jr. started racing Sportsman, they had some of the clutch and the flywheel and some things around that I needed for the race car, and he's helped us out with that and helped me get going. But the color of those cars, Mikey Clayton actually kind of designed all that. And
they were cool. They were like a dark blue, almost a black on the bottom, and then it was a little bit of white in between, and it went to like a metallic blue on the top. And what really made that car stand out, which was pretty gutsy of him to do, he put orange 45s on top of the blues, and it really looked good.
Yeah, that was all Mike. Yeah, that was all Mike. Yeah.
All right, we just touched on your Welsh Farms sponsor. Another sponsor you had after Welsh Farms was Funtown.
Oh, yeah.
Which was pretty cool because me and my brother were that age. We're between 10 and 15 years old, and my mom used to take us up to Funtown. It was a huge toy store in Freehold. And was that owned by the same company that owned Foodtown?
There was 2 Norcus brothers. There was Jerry Norcus, and there was Rich Norcus, and their fathers, Ed, and I'm sorry, I can't remember the other one, but they kind of broke up and they all went their own ways. And ironically, I used to work for Richard Norcus in Farmingdale, Foodtown, in my teens. And then Jerry Norcus, when I started working at Welsh Farms, I was hired to sell ice cream mixes to supermarkets, or ice cream containers, half gallons and quarts and pints to the supermarkets. So therefore, I got to know Jerry Norcus, who owned a group of stores, and he owned Funtown. And through, you know, business events and things with them, I got to know Jerry well, and he was a real nice, classy guy. And he started sponsoring my race car, but he said, I can't do it through Foodtown because of Twin County. And but I have this toy store, Funtown. And Gina and Claudette Van Squeek, they both worked there, and they were urging him to sponsor race cars and stuff. And on all the events and things that we did, he came out and he sponsored my race car. Another guy that I would have never been able to modify a race without him. But Funtown,
that was a cool sponsorship.
Yes.
Because Funtown was huge. I mean, everybody went and bought toys from there. They were like practically like a Toys R Us before Toys R Us, you know, and it was definitely cool that you had that sponsor on there. Then the shock of a lifetime happened. You get hooked up with Mustang Gas and Oil, which you talked about. And the cool thing about that sponsor is me and Tim as kids watching Saturday morning cartoons on Cablevision at our house. All of a sudden, a commercial comes on, and we see Tom Mauser's Modified pulling up to gas pumps at Mustang Gas and Oil. And it was a regular flat-out TV commercial with an asphalt Modified in it. That was a really cool TV commercial, Tom. Can you tell us a little bit how that happened?
Well, Art was a renegade in the fuel business for sure, and he was buying a non-branded fuel. You know, all the gas, I don't know that business 100%, but they all pull gas. You know, when you buy Exxon, it isn't maybe just made by Exxon. It's all made and is disseminated out through to all different brands. And so Art would buy fuel, and he came up with this Mustang Gas and Oil, and it was Mustang from Lee Iacocca making that Mustang. Okay. You know, that was an individual, you know, spirited icon, right? And so that's how Art built his gas stations, and he built them, and they selling Welsh Farms products. He was a customer, and man, it was, there's another story there. George, who had a Troyer Modified, he used to go in there, and then Art, you know, through associations again, thin threads and of people. And then Art Madge and him were talking, and, you know, Art kind of asked him to get involved with me and help me out. And lo and behold, he did a lot for us in our race car teams, mentally and financially.
I just want to talk specifically about the commercial itself, because it was very professional and very well done. And it aired a long time. They played that for a couple of years. You know, that was a very good TV commercial, and it came on quite a bit. And every time we saw it, we thought it was so cool.
Yeah.
I always, because Josh, what it was is Tommy, you were actually driving the car in the commercial, right?
Yes.
He pulled in, like flew up to the gas pump, stopped at the gas pumps, and it was right at the Mustang Gas and Oil gas station. Mm-hmm. And he had crew guys put gas in it and like wipe the window down, and they're in uniforms. It was a really cool commercial. I was just wondering, was that actors putting the gas in the car and wiping the windshield, or was it you're actually crew guys? That
was the one guy that jumped up in the air when I pulled in.
Yeah.
One of Art's guys. But we had Michael Ostrander was with us. I think Flash was with us. Randy was with us. I think Mike Clayton was with us. And we all had little, you know, cameos in it. And it was, you know, Art, he did that. And you're right. That was just at the time of pay TV, local TVs. And
Monmouth Cablevision.
And he spent a lot of money and time on that, but it did pay off for him. And with that, making that commercial, it was a lot of fun. And, you know, the second part of it, we're actually, you know, he spent twice as much because he wanted to get it right. And we had a shoot at the racetrack. If you remember me going by the start finish line, and the man checkered flag was Art Peerless. Now, they needed to have the camera. They wanted to show the car coming and the speed, and they had the camera, and it kept falling over.
Oh my God.
I actually just found the commercial.
Down on that track, holding that camera, and they made me drive a foot away from the camera. I wasn't going full speed, but let me tell you, I was way above 60 miles an hour when I went by.
Wow.
And I believe she stood there and did that. And that was quite a day.
Do you have a copy of that?
I saw that floating around on Facebook.
Yeah, Josh just found it. Would you find it on YouTube, Josh?
Yep, I found it on YouTube. I'm going to share it on the page right now.
We'll share that on the RPM podcast Facebook, so everybody gets to see that commercial. It was really cool just to see.
Art Peerless, Pere.
Yeah, that was definitely cool. I mean, you did very good with the sponsorships and promoting stuff, because, like you said, you weren't going racing without them. You know what I'm saying?
Oh.
That also leads me to your connection with Jerry Connor. Jerry Connor was a good friend of my father. Me and Tim grew up with his son's pride in Shannon. We pretty much got them involved in racing. They really knew nothing about stock car racing, and my parents used to drive us to New Egypt Speedway. And one night my parents couldn't go, so we begged Jerry to take us to the races because we wanted to watch you guys race. I think even then it was like on a Wednesday night. They had like a special Wednesday night show. And he was next door neighbors with Lenny Boyd on Belmar Boulevard. And of course, we were next door neighbors with you. So the thing was, his neighbor was going to be our neighbor, in the race. Both you and Lenny Boyd were in that race. So we got rooting for you and Lenny Boyd. And Jerry loved it. Jerry fell in love with it. He couldn't believe that he didn't go to the sooner. And he just loved it. And Shannon really liked the racing. So they thought it'd be cool to put Shannon's name on a couple race cars. So he did sponsor Lenny Boyd, and he did sponsor you at the time. I mean, I think you guys put something like Shannon Connor special on your cars or something like that. And it was just like a father-son rivalry, Jerry's guy was Lenny and Shannon's guy was Tommy, and whoever beat who, and they had bragging rights for the week. But Jerry ended up helping you quite a bit more than he helped Lenny in the end. He pretty much became a little bit of a car owner for you. Can you tell us a little bit about that relationship?
Yeah, with Jimmy Grattan and Betty and Bobby and Billy, they, I always felt like I could have been taken a little bit away from the family racing. And Jerry come along, wanted to buy half the race car out, and I thought it was the right thing to do. And then later on, I mean, there was nothing wrong with Jerry and our partnership, but Jim, he would have rather me stayed and through the life, talking with him. But so I guess my choice there was maybe not my best choice I ever made because Jim really was dedicated to racing. And great guy too.
Jerry's a little bit known for doing that, not in auto racing, but he did it with bowlers too. He helped bowlers a lot. He would help them out, pay their expenses, and then he would take some of the purse money they won. I know he had involvement with Parker Bone III. He had other bowlers. He also did it with like people that played softball, and he was real into bowling and stuff. I guess he just took what he did with his professional bowlers and bought into your race team to help you out with the race team, and he would try it that way.
Yes.
That was a pretty good relationship you guys had.
And we started building. Yes, Tom and Jerry Racing, right?
Tom and Jerry. It was called Tom and Jerry Racing, and they had Tom and Jerry, the cartoon characters, as their race team logo. It was a pretty cool race team logo.
Yeah, we had a lot of good memories there, and Jerry Connor, I think he was like 45 years old when he was doing this, and he never raced, and he wanted to build a street stock. Well, Billy built McGill and Charlie, and I helped somewhat put a roll cage in a Camaro for him and got him running. They built that car like in a week, and then Ronnie Buck took care of it.
Didn't Linus Johnson have a lot to do with that build too?
Not in the build, but in the after he got up and running. He was helping him, and Jerry went from I think his first race he got up to the top 3 or something, or one or something.
It was like a turkey derby, and he finished second behind like Bill Verways, who won like 13 features that year.
I can remember Jerry. He loved to smoke, and Jerry after the race, I go up. He would have like cigarette burning, and it's all sweaty, and I gave it all I had, and he did. He did all that, and then never raced a car before, and to do what he did was quite an accomplishment.
Just to talk about
family, as you know.
Just to talk about that street stock real quick before we go with your modifieds, he bought a Camaro, and he bought it off Kevin Beesterfield. And he paid quite a bit for that car, but he was smart because he wanted to build a car in 7 days. So he found the Camaro. The reason why he wanted to buy this Camaro off the Beesterfield so much, because it already had the 350 engine in it. So that the engine was already in the car and ready to go. And the other big reason he wanted it is because it was a stick shift. It had a clutch set up in it and everything already, so you didn't have to put that stuff in it. It was all set up in there. So basically, they gutted the car, put a cage in it, made it safety, and ran it the way it was back then. And that car was fast. And another thing I want to mention about that car, the first time we raced it, it was just a red car, whatever. The car was painted from the factory. But over the winter, they painted that car to match your modified. And it was pretty cool seeing the street stock painted exactly like a modified. There were team cars, but in two different divisions. I always thought that was pretty cool.
Yes, that was. Yes, it was.
Another thing I remember about with you and Jerry, I stayed with you guys in the Poconos for the Race of Champions one time. And the whole time you were at the condo with Jerry, I don't know if you ever got your way or not. And I don't know if you remember this either, but you were begging for him to buy Penske shocks for Pocono. That's when Penske first came out racing shocks, and you wanted those shocks. And you kept saying, Jerry, we need these shocks. Jerry, we need these shocks. And he kept saying, Tommy, they're too expensive. Tommy, they're too expensive. Did you ever get Penske shocks?
I did, but how I got them, Art Peerless, his brother, was the head fuel purchasing agent for Roger Penske out of Reading area, right? And when Art invited us to the Meadowlands at the first Grand Prix, and I walked in with Bob Peerless, Art Peerless, in the Meadowlands, and Roger Penske saw Bob coming and opens the gate, and he comes in, and Bob introduced us to him. And Roger Penske knew my name from racing at Wall Stadium, and he said to me, go around the corner and meet my drivers. Well, I walked around the corner of the Danny Sullivan, Rick Mears cars were right there behind the ribbons. And I went around the corner, and they stand up in tension and stick out their chest and introduce themselves to me. And I was like Fred Flintstone, Ralph Grant. I couldn't even talk to him. So, and I won the night before at Wall. And that was quite of an experience. So through that, I started calling around. I was never shy of calling people. And I called around the Penske, and he remembered me, and he gave me shocks at Pocono.
Oh, did you?
Shocks. Yep. So I did end up with him. And then Flash, Bill Edcott, used to work at IROC and worked for Ray or him up here when they had that road racing car. And Flash used to take care of them for me.
Because they were rebuildable, right? You had to rebuild them and everything.
Well, he used to, to shim them, and he put the pressure in them, and he had all the kits. And but we ran those shocks, and I really liked them.
They did make a difference?
To me, they did, yes.
And I just remember you wanted those Penske shocks so bad, and you weren't letting up. You were getting them one way or another. You were getting them. Yes,
and I got them from Penske.
Did you ever run them at all?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. When we were first playing with him, a funny story. It was a double feature night, and I won the first race, and it wasn't working right. And I came in the pits, and I said, we did make a mistake. We have to switch the two shocks because we were testing, right? And I can remember Bill Edcott comes around with the crew, and they jack up the car, and you only have a few minutes to change your tires over, or do whatever you got to do to adjust air pressure and all that. So to get the back tires off, they take the shock off the right rear. And you know how they used to have the bolts that went into the shock hanger and the coilover bracket?
Yes.
Well, it's jammed. He has a jam going in. And he comes yelling to me in the window, and he goes, all right, just so you know, the left rear shock bolt's jammed cross-threaded, and I think it will hold. Be careful.
Oh my God.
So your mind is, you're wondering, and it hooked up the car, and the car we went out, and I think we won a couple times twin feature nights, both of them.
Tom, another thing I don't know if I remember this right or not, but I remember a big thing was everybody used to call I don't think it was literally called this, but all the racers and fans used to call it kind of like a triple crown thing at Wall Stadium. There was the Garden State Classic. There was always that Budweiser race, the Budweiser race, and Turkey Derby. They considered those the big three races at Wall Stadium. Didn't you win all three of those races in 1 year?
I did. Yes. We were actually won Turkey Derby 2 years. We won in a row.
In a row, yeah.
3 years in a row. Remember, I can always remember the ones I lost. I had one shock go bad. I had a Bilstein shock on the right rear, and all the oil leaked out of it. And 23 laps to go, Jamie passed me. And, man, I was way ahead. And I lost that race, but I came back the next 2 years and won that. And then the Garden State Class, or that was the Garden State Classic. And then the Turkey Derby race, we won 2 years in a row also.
Yeah, and you beat some pretty heavy hitters. In 1986, Jerry Kramer finished second, and we had him on the show last week. And Jerry was a very good racer. He won it in 85, and he came back and finished second to you in 86. Then in 87, this is pretty cool. You beat Reggie Ruggiero to win the Turkey Derby in 1987, and Reggie was a national modified racer, and he raced all over the country. How did you beat Reggie that day? Did you actually pass him, or was he behind you the whole race? Or
Actually, I passed him in the beginning of the race, up on the outside. I got up on the outside, and there was a group of cars, and I can remember I made advances of like 5 rows. Up on the outside, there was, that lane just kind of went, and in those years, that I guess that would have been my heyday, racing against, like you said, it was something racing against Tony Sisko and Charlie Kremer. I can remember Charlie Kremer gave me a big conversation one time when he just came up with a confidence booster, and he goes, you're the guy now, you're the racer now. And I was like, oh, he's talking to me. What's he talking about?
Even by doing a little bit of research on you, even when you won the championship, like the year before, like Gil Hearn won, and then the year after you, it was like Tony Sisko. So you were right in the best of the best,
Yeah, there's, Gil Hearn, what a mentor he was to me. Gil, when I was a little kid, he used to stop in my grandmother's gas station, and we would go and hop in the back of his truck, and he would drive us to Wall Stadium.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. And I can remember, Hearn, and he was a friend of my father's too, through the operating engineers. And Hearn used to talk to me about racing, driving. And he never told me what I did right, what I did. Sometimes you got to understand, if you're not in this position, someone else is going to be in that position in the modifieds. And he used to give me these little tips and talks to me, and don't run into people. He's very smart, and he gave me little techniques. And I'll just share this one story about Gil. I just love the guy. We were racing, and he was going for his 100th win. Jeff Gravatt, Farmingdale boy, another Farmingdale boy. He was down with the trophies for Gil Hearn's 100th win. And Hearn and I'm running second, and I got up behind him, and he starts slowing a little, and I don't run into him, and I'm just trying to figure out how to pass him. In about 2 laps, I saw this little, where he was a little weak, but believe me, he never drove the same lap twice when he knows he's off a bit. And I got up underneath him and pushed on his left rear bumper so gently, and it pushed him up coming off of 4. And I went down underneath him, and I looked up at him, and he was looking down at me, just shaking his head. And at the end of that race, I went down and got the checkered flag, and Jeff was yelling at me for passing Gil Hearn for the 100th win. We went up to the scale and got through, and my brother Buzz is there, and he goes, oh, Tom, oh shit, here comes Hearn. I said, oh shit, is he angry? Is he mad? Is he really mad? Well, what is he? Well, he came over and gave me a hug and told me that was the most fun he had in 5 years.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, that was quite a story. And he goes, I taught you well. He says, I didn't even feel you pushing me up there. And as soon as I started heading up the hill, I knew you had me.
Hey, Tom, believe it or not, you've been on with us for an hour and a half already. I still have a few more questions I want to ask you. So.
We told you, it goes fast.
It goes by fast, don't it, Tom?
Well, we got to talk about Timmy Shin and United Crane.
Yeah, we will. We're getting there. I want to talk a little bit about your dirt racing you did over at East Windsor.
Sure.
How did that come about? I remember I think you were racing both. I think East Windsor raced on Friday nights back then, so you went and tried dirt racing for a little while. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I always wanted to drive an Indy car. I always wanted
That's
to
a
do
good
that.
question. Did you ever think about moving into the NASCAR ranks, or were you an open wheel guy and you thought you were like a sprint car type Indy car racer?
I never planned that far ahead, because of money situations. I always raced within my own means. And
back when you were racing, modifieds were cool, and there was big paying modified races back then, so you really didn't have to look past the modifieds back then.
And I loved what I was doing. But getting into dirt cars, I had a connection there with Billy Schmedlin, who worked at United Crane, and his brother, who owned Edison Generator, in the famous 747 car. Their driver was retiring, and they were kind of interested in me, and I threw a deal together with Welsh Farms, and we got that sponsorship. But I never made it that well with that team in the car. It was just at the cusp. I'm not blaming them or the cars or anything, but they were.
So you drove the famous 747 Edison Generator car?
Yes, I did.
I see. I don't remember that. I remember you being in a 45.
Yes, and that's where after that I got in this 45. It was Phil's and from California Speed and Sport, who always brought the car down, and then Jerry from Jessel's used to help me with the engines, and we smoked more pistons out than anything.
I remember that.
I never did win in the dirt car, but there they had that curfew. And I'm driving around the racetrack. I'm in the lead, and I had the battery fall out of the car or something one time when I was out in the lead by 3/4 of a lap on a 20-lap race. And then a couple laps from the end, I'm sitting in the infield. And then another time, they would not run past 11 o'clock. I'm looking at my clock going underneath the flag stand going, come on, throw the flag. Something happened that night, and I stuck it down into the third turn infield, and something broke in the car, and we never really won. And I always said that that's haunting me. I always wanted to win. But the dirt racing is really what got me to a different level behind the wheel and keeping the car moving at Wall Stadium.
It definitely helps. I mean, I've lately, the last couple of years, I went dirt racing, and it's helped me on the asphalt.
Yes, it will. It's a different level of racing. There's a different skill set, and if you think you got good car control, go run dirt. You'll be better.
Or snow. Snow is another one, right, Scott?
Yeah. We raced the enduro races on the snow, but
I remember you. Yeah.
But you also picked Windsor, which was a tough dirt track. It was a fast half-mile racetrack, and they had that great clay on there, and it was a great racing surface.
Yes,
so
you
only did the dirt racing for about a year?
Yes, a couple of years.
Oh, you did go a couple of years? And you would race there on Friday nights and still run your asphalt car on Saturday nights at Wall?
Yes. Yes, I did.
So that was a total separate deal from your asphalt modified?
Yes, it was.
Did you ever figure out why you were breaking engines? Was Jessel just trying stuff, or was it like a fuel injection thing or a carburetor thing?
We had, I know we're long on time. It was just a whole bunch of things. And it was just a whole bunch of calamity of worst case scenarios that could happen.
I remember one of the first times you drove that 45 modified, I actually went up there with your brother Greg to watch you race, and I remember the red flag came out for some reason, and you were sitting in turn one, and me and Greg were watching you. Me and Greg both looked at each other like, he's in trouble now, and someone said, why is that? I'm like, it looks like he just threw all his tear-offs off. It looked like you threw your tear-offs off, and all of them came off. Like, it looked like you threw like 5 tear-offs off out the window. That's one thing I had to learn how to use once I went dirt races, to pull the tear-offs off one at a time and not grab them all in one shot,
Well, that's a whole new skill set, right? You got your fireproof gloves on, and you got this 100 thousandths of an inch, or less than 10 thousandths of an inch thing you're trying to pull off of another one.
I noticed what a lot of the dirt guys out in Pennsylvania do. They actually take the whatever hand they pull the tear offs with, they just cut the fingertips off their index finger and their thumb so they can at least grab the tear offs. You know what I'm saying? It took me a while to get used to it too.
Yeah.
All right, so that was that. Another thing I wanted to ask you, and I asked pretty much all the modifieds that come on here, and they all pretty much have the same story. Were you involved with that 1991 modified boycott at Wall Stadium?
No.
That left to go to Flemington? Because I don't remember you going to Flemington. Did you
No.
race at Flemington?
No, I stopped right around then.
Okay.
I didn't race until I got up with Sal Bruno. That was a few years later. Sal Bruno called me with John Goldie and
that was the 88 car, right? The concrete car?
Yes. That Dave Garfinkel drove also.
Yeah. Why? So you're saying in 1990 you stopped racing?
I don't know what year that actually was, but I was not part of it when for that strike.
So you actually got out of racing for a little while then, huh?
I did.
Was that like business related, or did you start a family at that time, or what was going on that you stopped racing?
Yeah.
Or did you just have enough?
My wife and I have 5 children.
Oh my God.
And everyone was born on a Thursday, and 3 of them went to the races on Saturday. And between making a career and raising a family and racing, she kind of thought I had enough, and I kind of thought I might have had enough. And I took off for a few years until Sal Bruno called me, and then I got, I got a great friend. Sal's a great friend of mine, and John Goldie, who worked on the PD race, or Matt Hirschman, him and his twin brother James owned. And I got John started calling me when I moved out to Pennsylvania because he's in Lebanon, and he goes, "Tommy, come on over and help me on the car." And I it's one thing. It's one thing about racing, right? You quit racing and you don't go for 5 or 6, 10 years, and you go back. It was like you never left.
Right.
It's a strange environment like that. And then from there, I know you're short on time, but
we got all the time. You go as long as you want.
It's up to you. Keep talking.
Okay. Hope I'm not boring everybody's ears.
So how long did you drive the 88 car for Sal Bruno? Because Tim, didn't John drive that car as well?
Yes. And actually, what happened? I know. Do you remember when Grandpa wanted me to drive John Boy's car because they were going to be away? It was like the Garden State Classic or something. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, it was just unfortunate. That was a great honor for me. You're talking about race car. I had a chance to drive for Lenny Boyd. I drove Dickie Barney's car one night. I drove Grandpa Blewett's car. You got me thinking about everything I did through racing. It was a while ago.
Where did you drive Dick Barney's car out? I didn't know that.
When Tony Raceworks had built Tony a brand new car, and they were switching cars, and they had 2 full-time cars, and Dickie asked me to come and drive it. And Tony drove the new car, and I drove the old car.
I also remember Robert Barney driving that car too. He would go out with it every once in a while too. How did you like driving that car?
I liked it. I told Dick, I said, my goodness, that's the one thing. When I race cars, I always did my own setups. I always did my own thinking and philosophy around the car. And I always wish like I would have raced with like Lenny Boyd or somebody that had so much more, experiences and knowledge of things. And I was telling Dick, I said, Dick, I went down the end of that straightaway. I tapped the brakes. I almost got ripped out of the seat belts. And the car had a left-hand turn, almost went through the infield. and that's pretty much what it felt like. And the harder you got on the gas, the faster you got back on the gas, the better it came off the corner.
Right. I know that can go either way when you drive someone else's car. You can either get out of it and be like, thank God I have my own race car. My race car runs so much better than this. Or you'll get out of somebody else's car and like, man, if I drove this thing every week, I'd win every week. I've gotten other people's car and be like, oh my God, what a hunk of junk. Thank God I have my race car. I can't wait to get back into it.
Oh, don't talk about my car like that.
The funny thing about racing, Scott, not every driver ever understands what is a working car or what works right or wrong.
Right.
There's not, that's what separates a lot of the winners, right? That's why winners win, right? And other people, don't.
I've let my friends take my cars out too, and they come back in and they're like, oh my God, your car's so smooth. There's no vibrations. I'm like, well, you're not supposed to have a vibration. And I would take their car out. I'm like, man, your drive shaft or something's bad. This thing's vibrating like crazy. How long has it been doing this? They're like, oh, since I built the car. I just thought race cars had vibrations. And I'm like, no, they're not supposed to vibrate,
You're talking about letting people drive your car. I let Randy Goss drive my car. It was a big race warm-up, but I didn't think there was going to be a lot.
Never let guys take your car out. That's a mistake.
No, Randy deserved it. And one thing, I went to Charlotte with Jessel and Jerry when it was Jeff Gordon's and Ray Abraham's first Baby Ruth's car ride.
Oh, wow.
I let Mike Ostrander take my car to the race and go race it. Go put tires. Tell Ronnie I'll buy the tires from him when I get back. And Mike had what a funny story that was. Mike, I went to the gas station on Tuesday morning and Mike's service center, and here he comes walking across the parking lot all sideways. I apologize for everything I ever told you about racing. He was apologizing for 15 minutes. It's not easy. It's unbelievable.
It's a lot harder than it looks.
And he was going on and on about it. But one time I let Randy Goss wanted to drive it and talking about Jerry Kramer, such a gentleman. And Randy went out on the track and he was hugging the bottom, probably kicking up some dirt back then, right? When the track was all gravel in the infield. Yeah, right. And then it was kicking up and Jerry Kramer comes over to me and he goes, Mauser, what in the hell is the matter with you? And going around there that slow, no one, you were hogging up the whole whatever, you were screwing up the whole practice laps. And I said, Jerry, that wasn't me, that was Randy. And I'm sorry. Jerry's such a gentleman, right?
Where did you drive Lenny Boyd's car at? Which car did you drive for Lenny?
The 22, he called it the kit car, I think it was. He hurt his wrist, and I hurt my car in Pocono or something. And Lenny, Randy Goss actually talked to Lenny and asked, why don't you get Tom to drive the car? Well, I went over and I got fitted in the car, and we talked about different things, and we got down to the racetrack, and we had a great time. Was
that orange and brown Raceworks car you had?
No, this was the white. This was the white kit car from Troyer.
Okay. The white and blue and had the orange 22s on the side of it.
Okay.
I think he ended up winning Turkey Derby with that car.
Yes. He didn't win Turkey. He came in second that year. The time I drove it, and then he came in second, because a couple of the things that we talked about and what I felt in the car, he goes, I knew he had a sense of, he always thought he should do those kind of things. But him and I got a great, I think we both have the same kind of driving style.
Right.
And funny. Someday when you get him in there, ask him about the hook and ladder. And
we definitely want to get Lenny Boyd on, because Lenny Boyd's one of those drivers. He quietly had a great career. Like, he quietly won a lot of big races. He's got 2 Turkey Derby wins. Plus, he won the Race of Champions. That's huge,
There is. And, when I was a kid growing up in Farmingdale, I always heard about Lenny Boyd. He went to Indy. He drove this. He did this. And, Lenny was an icon to me. And he's not that much older than I am. And then when I got to know him, and then I got to race his car, that was a big moment for me.
Yeah, he definitely came a different route to the modifieds at Wall Stadium than most people did. Like you said, you bought a Sportsman and you started over there. He came up through the midgets and stuff like that, and started racing modifieds later in his career. He started racing the modifieds,
And just wait to hear his stories about his father and his uncle building their own wheels and the casting and the ground. Just
he's still doing. He's back to his midget roots and building everything by himself and winning. You know, he's a really smart guy.
Oh yeah, very smart guy.
All right,
and he's got me to love of flying.
I know.
I love to fly, and my wife has other thoughts on that. So motorcycle riding and RV, and that's what we do now.
Yeah, I see that you love having a motorcycle and stuff, and you always post on Facebook where you're riding the motorcycles. One last question on other cars you drove. I remember you driving a Troyer for a guy too. It was like a black and gold car, and I think it had 45 on it. It might have even had 66 on it after you raced.
Turkey guy, right?
Turkey Racing or something, wasn't it? Can you tell us a little bit about that car? I remember you going to Martinsville with that car.
Yeah, that was George. He was friends with Art Peerless. He lived by Art Peerless's Jackson place, and George worked with my dad at Chip Bar, and he had this modified, and he didn't have enough to finish it, and then he wanted us to drive it, and then I got into it, and he didn't have all the parts he needed, and it was like trying to race with two different cars is like having one car here and one car there is like 11 cars.
Right,
and,
right.
Didn't have any success with that.
Do you know where that car came from?
Actually, that car, Don Ling and his son, Ling bought that car and changed that over, and Don Ling Jr. did a lot. He won in that car.
Right.
Yes. That's where that car went.
Yeah, that car just like appeared out of nowhere one day. Yeah, it's just like, oh wow, look at this car, you know. But you did take that car to Martinsville, right?
I took that to Pocono.
Pocono? You ran out of Pocono?
Yes, I tried. Yeah, we didn't qualify that year.
Oh, no.
Qualify, yeah.
All right, Tom, you did want to talk about later in your career. Later in your career, you did two things. Number one, you teamed up with United Crane and Tim Shin, and you guys showed up with this beautiful hauler, stacker trailer. I think Ken Woolley was driving one of the race cars. You made a return back into racing with all brand new equipment with Tim Shin. Can you tell us a little bit how that deal went down and how that went?
Yeah, Timmy and my father, Timmy and my father were good friends going into Union Hall. Timmy Shin's family started the operating engineers.
Oh,
and
really?
Yes. And Timmy always kind of looked up to my father. My father was always friends with him. And, you know, because Timmy's like 4 years old, 5 years maybe older than I am. And so Timmy always said, yeah, we're going to get a race car team. We're going to get a race car team. And he was always around and really likable kind of guy. And I called him one day. I said, Tim, if you're really serious about racing, I think I'm ready to go back racing. He goes, man, I'd love to have you come back and race. And from there we started. And I didn't want to get into. Obviously, this was years later. And Billy McGill, he told me he threw away the jig, and how to throw away the jig of the cars and whatever, and the time frame. So that's when Timmy was paying the bills, and Timmy could afford the race cars, and that's when we got into. I didn't want to buy a regular Troyer car. I wanted to buy something that was a little bit different. And through the years, I got to know Ed Flemke. You know, one day I sat on the wall at Pocono with Ed Flemke Sr., and it was right where the gasoline alley came out into Pit Road, and Darrell Waltrip was in the car, and Neil Bonnet was in the car. So they're both Junior Johnson's cars. First lap, they ran into one another, knocked the radiator out of one car, bent the whole car up on the other one. Junior Johnson comes to me and yells at me in his southern accent and was unloading like it was my fault. And he was telling me that race car drivers are the, bleepity stupidest people on the planet. None of them have any blippity brains. And Ed Flemke turned around when Junior left, and he goes, Tom, there's a lot of disappointments in auto racing. And I use that comment about Eddie Sr. all the time. So I'm showing my age, right?
So is that why you chose to go the Raceworks route with Tim Shin?
Well, no, I've always kind of hung around just enough with Dickie Barney and stuff, and learning different things, and I got to know Eddie through building the race cars with Tony's Dickie Barney and Tony Siscone, and at Pocono one year we were racing, and I can remember I passed Eddie for the qualifying position, and he comes over to me and goes, Mauser, you had to pass me, right? and so we were always friends, and I just elected him and Reggie building those racework cars on the principles of how they were built. I understood it and I liked it, and that's why we went with that car. Yeah, that was an all.
You did good with that car. That was later in your career. Kenny Woolley also drove them. From an outsider looking in, do you think that team went too big too soon? It seems like you guys were spread a little thin. You had that big hauler, you had the stacker trailer, you had Kenny in another car. To me, it seemed like it was too big too soon.
Well, go back a year. Timmy didn't get that big hauler until after we went in partners with the Speedway. Mm-hmm. So at that time, we had a trailer from Linus Johnson that was a fifth wheel. And that's what we normally went to all stadium in. The toter home and the big trailer came as we wanted to go out on the tour and start venturing out a little bit, promoting the Speedway, getting some of the other drivers, and that was the principle of that.
Did you ever do any tour races with Tim Shin?
No. But, Timmy and I, when we started that to come back from racing, when I left racing, came back with Sal Bruno, we won another Turkey Derby race. We won.
Yeah, that was in '97, right?
Yeah, we won quite a bit of races in South.
Yeah, you were good at that '88 car.
And that was with Tom Skinner engine. And I got to know Tom Skinner a little bit, another racing icon. And good memories there, too. And for that, and then I didn't race, and then we came back and raced with Shin, and that year we won every long distance race plus a couple.
Right. Now you ran good in that car too. I mentioned that the team got real big, real quick, and you brought up another thing he was doing at the time. He took the racetrack over too at the time. So not only was he trying to build this big modified team, he also took the racetrack over. You were involved in that first group of people that bought into the racetrack. And I remember you running the Speedway for a while. What was your experience like with that? I mean, I'm also friends with Kevin Ayers. He ran Central Jersey Speedway, and his family owns a pretty successful businesses. He said that's the hardest thing he ever did in his life was running a racetrack. He said he learned more about people and business in those 10 months of running a racetrack than he did 4 years of college.
I believe, I have the same feelings on that. Okay. When the racetrack was for sale, I went and I talked to Tucker, and another story of thin threads, right? My grandmother on my father's side, Ruth Mauser, she was taking me to the races all the time when I was a little kid and watched Johnny Lors. And her and Mrs. Nigel went to school together. So they were like classmates for a long time, and they knew each other quite well. And so I was trying to get a deal together to buy the Speedway quietly, and for the money and everything that I was trying to put together through business. And then Timmy and I were talking about it, and then it grew into other partnerships, which it wasn't my first choice, but I always said I'd just leave it at that. I didn't want to be sitting in a rocking chair one day wishing I tried it.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But hey, you never know. You never know what would happen in the world of business, right?
Yeah. Would you ever try something like that again?
It still has my. It still carries my interest. I hate losing.
Do you think?
And I love racing, and I love to go around racing. And you know, there's never been so much fun as what we've all enjoyed, you know, racing. And short track racing is, you know, and so many bred into all of us. We don't know we're not smart enough to know any better, right?
Yeah, Tim, you had a question for him?
Tommy, do you think Wall Stadium has a future beyond these owners, or you think these owners will be the last of them?
I'm out of the loop just far enough where I don't know how to even answer that. I don't have enough facts.
Okay.
I only have numbers.
By you being part of that ownership in the very beginning, do you think that the property value there is worth more than what the racetrack will be worth someday just by the location next to those major highways?
You know, it is, period. You know, the hardest thing about running a racetrack, and I did listen to Dougie Wolcott's comment on that, but and I can tell you that when you run a regular business, and like right now I'm the vice president of the Taylor Products Company, and we have 70 employees. And in there, you can find different ways to find the right people in the right positions that they're in, and to keep it moving. When you make a little decision in a zig from a zag, and you can see the outcome change within 24 hours. You know, when you have a racetrack and there's 30 events, say, and you have to wait all week to see how it changed, it's such a slow process. And at that time, Mrs. Nichol and Tom O'Rourke era, right? Everybody knew who was the boss and what you couldn't get away with, and everybody had a different mentality over racing, and the racers kind of policed themselves. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
And now all of a sudden, younger generations and different things. Now pointing fingers is good, bad, but it isn't different. That people always like to point other blames out instead of pointing fingers at themselves. And you need a strong rules and a body to organize that and to keep it all fair and consistent in the rule package for the competitors and the fans, right? Everything has to be equal. So all of that just puts another load on the racers, and through safety features, safety equipment, technology.
And at the same time, you're trying to save racers cost too. You try to keep everything cost effective, and that's tough too, because there's people with money that want to go faster and be able to buy 4 tires a night, and there's people that can't afford to buy 4 tires a night, so they want a tire bank rule. So they're happy with the tire bank rule, but then the people that can afford the 4 tires don't like the tire bank rule. So it's like whenever you make a decision in racing, the problem is 50% of the people are going to be happy with it, and the other 50% of the people are going to hate it. You never make everybody happy with a rules change or something you do, like you said, during the course of a week at a racetrack, you know?
Yeah, there is.
Then the hard part is when you do get everything set, well, then Saturday rolls around and it rains out anyway, so you did all that work for nothing.
And, you know, just as a sum, if you have a business that runs 30 times a year and you're paying taxes on 365 days a year, the math is off, right?
Well, that's like whenever my friends come from out of state for Turkey Derby, they see how packed the place is. They're like, oh my God, that track's a gold mine. They made us so much money. I said, well, swing by here next weekend when the place is closed. They ain't making no money next weekend or the weekend after that.
Yeah.
They ain't making no money this weekend coming up. You know, I run a towing business. I got to make money every single day. I don't know how people do these businesses that, like you said, only make money 30 times a year. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And there's taxes. There's a litter tax that we're paying on the town.
And especially when it's can be, you know, changed with the weather.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, there's, you know, the thing that's blessed about Wall Stadium is it is a very unique track, right? Mm-hmm. You can sit up, you can see the cars running down, and they are fast. They do carry a lot of speed, and there is a lot of excitement there. Plus, there's like 1,235 people per square mile in New Jersey.
Right.
And then the time that's starting promoting it and get it rolling, there's still opportunities there, but that's all for another conversation.
That'll be the next episode.
So getting back at it, you would like to tackle like that's something again, and
Sure, I'm a bit. Sure, hey, my hat to Diane Krause family that took that over. I think they've just done a magnificent job, and losing their Mr. Krause, it was just such an untimely problem there, and for the family, it was such a loss, and for the racers, because that guy, the first time I ever met him, he went, "You're the famous Tom Mauser." That guy made you feel like you were a king, and I don't care who you were, and I've seen him around other people, and he God rest in peace. He was such a great guy.
So do you ever see yourself daydreaming? Because I know when I'm on like Facebook or something like that, I'll see a racetrack for sale for like $785,000 in like Virginia somewhere. Do you ever think about buying something like that maybe someday?
No.
No. I have a question. You still go to Wall Stadium quite a bit. I still see you there quite often. You, with all the knowledge and you have everything, if you were to up and decide, I want to go modified racing, but I want to be a car owner, who would you put in your car that's racing there now, like an up and coming driver?
Cisco.
Yeah.
Yeah, Cisco, hands down. He's one of the reasons that I go watch it. Well, Scott, you're getting too old.
You're a veteran. Yeah, you're a veteran.
I got 35 wins over there and 3 championships, just so you know.
I know you do.
I agree with you. We like Kyle Cisco on this show. He's been on this show before. We follow his career. He runs very smooth. He respects his equipment. They do run on a budget.
Or it does.
He doesn't wreck his car a lot. He does win a lot. And not only with the racing at the racetrack, since racing's been closed, he's been doing this iRacing stuff, and we pay attention to him with that, and he's doing very well with that too. And he's a great kid. He really is. We talk to him all the time.
Yes.
Everything's great.
Another Farmingdale boy, right?
Yeah, well, outside of Farmingdale, like Hal Jackson area.
Yeah, I think he has a Farmingdale mailing address over there where his father was, right? Really?
Tom,
did you ever think about doing that, starting a modified team?
I have Michael Ostrander, he's the race director over there.
Our race director now.
He won't approve me to race a modified. Can you believe that?
I'm saying being a car owner and having somebody like me or me drive it for you.
I would highly, I would not be, I know your driving skills. I've seen you through forever. I've seen you race. I'm a fan of yours, and you have a lot of talent.
Did you ever think about starting a modified team? I know you helped get that deal going with Hirschman with the PD guys and stuff like that. Yes. Did you ever think about being just a car owner and not driving yourself?
From that experience, no. It's a lot more fun driving a car.
Right. I'm the same way. Everybody's like, man, when you're done racing, I want to drive for you. I said, when I'm done driving, I'm done with race cars. I said, the only reason I go out in that garage, 5 nights a week, 6 nights a week is so I can get in that car and drive it,
Or your wife.
So I can drive it and my wife can drive her car. I do it so I can drive it,
I respect the people that can, own a team and hire people to drive, but I'll never fully understand that, putting all that investment into a car or a team and then having somebody else go out there to have all the fun.
See, I learned a little bit about that too. I never quite understood that either. But when I drove for Johnny Lures, he was just happy to be at the racetrack on a Saturday night and watching his car out on that racetrack. He just enjoyed being part of a team. And he was at the age where he couldn't drive it himself anymore. So he kept his race team going by putting younger drivers in. He still just wanted to be a part of it. And that's how they stay a part of it. But yeah, I agree, Josh. If I'm spending all my money and time and effort into these cars, I want to be the person that actually gets to go out and drive it.
Yeah.
I can. Example of that, Josh, is Dickie Barney.
Yeah.
Dickie Barney never turned a lap in the car, I don't believe. And when I first got to meet Dickie, we were racing Sportsman, and we always went right after the modified race. So as soon as the modified race took off, about the fourth lap, I came back, started up my engine, and got ready to go in it and get out. And this guy used to come over and go, "Hey, how'd Siscone do? How did he take up? You know, how did he go?" And then I said, "Oh, I didn't notice." And then the second week, I would look, and then it was the first 5 or 6 races before I ever met Dick Barney or knew who he was. Right?
Oh wow!
Now, that never turned a race. He couldn't even watch races at some point of his life, and I don't think I'm telling a story he hasn't told. And but the love of building things and creating things is a passion. You know, yes. I mean, you know, look at the hot rod guys, right?
Okay.
I mean, they're building hot rods and man, some magnificent cars and pieces, bodywork and just design, and they sell them, you know, or they're.
And you know, I tow for Dick Barney's service station over there in Lakewood, and he tells me he doesn't, like you just said, Tom, he enjoys building a better mousetrap. He enjoys going out in his shop and designing something, lightening something up, outthinking somebody, making it faster. He loves just bringing his race car to the track and seeing it do a 10th faster second lap than it did the week before. That's what he really enjoys doing.
That's right. And there is a lot of, gratification to that. That's like Dick used to. He would hold up a bathroom scale, and everything goes on this car gets weighed, man.
Oh, God. Yeah, I mean, I remember one time he got caught at Flemington running aluminum lug nuts.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
It had to be steel. He had aluminum lug nuts. Like, he would go that drastic on weight, and he's the type of guy, if the bolt stuck a quarter inch outside the nut, he would cut that part of the bolt off. You know, and he would have a coffee can, and he would throw all the ends of the bolts in the coffee can and say, "Look, 3 pounds by cutting all these bolts off." You know.
And he's
one that could bite you too, Tom. I've seen people lighting stuff up and then it breaks, you know, and then it's not any good anyway, and you lost the race because it was too light and it broke, you know.
Well, he taught me 3/4 inch bolts when we used to run the big 3/4 inch Hymans on the rear on the strut rods and stuff. I saw those holes drilled in the middle of those bolts, and I did it. Yeah. Yeah. But you know,
Tom, another thing that I always thought because like my brother says, we see down at New Smyrna, we see all these races, and you still follow the racing real close. Did you ever think about maybe putting a vintage car together, like doing with the Garden State Vintage Club, maybe restoring one of your old cars if you could find one, or a replica or anything like that?
You know, I think my next step, it's always been a dream to have one of my kids want to race. You know, and maybe not just jump into a modified, but to get some kind of a car and get one of those kids racing. They're all doing their own things, and they all talk about it once in a while. But like I told them, if you want it, you got to be dedicated, and you have, you gotta, you just can't show up at the racetrack as many people think they do.
It's a big commitment, that's for sure.
For 2 hours now, we do it.
Sorry, Scott. I saw Tom. You mentioned flying before. Now,
yes.
Now I've been lucky enough to have an introductory flight in like a Cessna, like a 4-seater, and one in a helicopter, and I had an absolute blast with both of them. And I know several racers that have also worked towards getting their pilot's license and stuff like that. I wasn't sure if you wanted to talk about that at all, because, I mean, flight is another passion of mine. It's just way out of my budget.
Yeah. Well, here's my youngest son, he just turned 17, Joseph, and he wanted to go flying. So I knew a pilot over in where we live, and he offered to take us up, and my boy Joey was flying the plane, and we just had a great time. And he's kind of interested in being a pilot, but we have one challenge. And guess what that is?
Money?
His mom.
Oh.
His mom hates airplanes. Every time there's an airplane crash, she calls me and tells me, "You're not getting in there."
I tell you what, me and Tim grew up. I don't know if you remember the Whites. They lived over on Shafto Street. Right behind us, there was David and Eric White.
Yeah.
Eric actually became a pilot, and we used to go flying with him right out of Vallejo Airport, out of the Gibson Air Academy over there. And I tell you what, I was always nervous flying, but when I started flying with him quite a bit, it was pretty amazing how safe it is. You know what I'm saying? Because we used to do like stalls where I'm like, well, what happened if the motor stalled right now? He would actually shut the engine off when we're flying. It was amazing how far you would just glide, without an engine, He's like, you got time to get down or find somewhere to land, you know what I'm saying? I enjoy the flying too.
Yeah, there's, my runway's getting a little shorter in length, and when you do fly places, you gain a little time back,
Yeah.
All right, Tom, we always end up, you've been on a little 2 hours now, but we always end up with a couple questions. My brother has a famous question. He asks all these modified drivers, is there any racetrack that the modifieds used to race at or race at now that you wish you would have raced at and never got a chance to race at? Maybe a track like New Hampshire?
I went with John and James Goldie to Oswego, and I walked into that Steel Palace, and I could just picture myself running that racetrack, hands down. I can't believe I was never there until 5 years ago.
Yeah, I know. I went for my first time from when the Racing Champions moved up there to watch, and I'm like, this place is pretty cool. That was another track we always heard about too. Some of the guys down this way would go up for that a big Budweiser Classic 200 race on Labor Day weekend up there, and that same thing. When I got up there later in life, I was like, oh, now I know why all these guys used to go up here and race, and I wish I would have started going up there sooner, but I didn't. I think you would have did good on a track like that too.
Tony Hirschman told me about when he won that race a couple times, and he said when those grandstands were packed, and you could, there, I don't know how many thousands of people were there, and they put you in the back of that truck and they drive you around as the champion. He said there was nothing like it.
It's like a mini Indy up there. Those people are like IndyCar type fans up there. That's why the super modifieds are so big. And that track is set up like an Indy where, the grandstands are covered grandstands. The flaggers on the inside of the track. And it's like, it's just like the front straightaway of Indy, but smaller,
Yeah, the flaggers in the infield. Yeah, and that going in that blind corners and it's just the sweep of it. And to watch, I was fortunate enough to see Matt win up there. And, man, to talk about a good driver, right? Jeez. But boy, what a smooth rolling track. It's that's my track, hands down. That's it. Oswego.
Now the tracks you did race, which was your favorite, even the dirt?
Wall Stadium that has my heart. That track.
Did you ever win over in New Egypt on the quarter mile?
Oh yeah, many times.
Yeah, you had a few wins over there too, right?
Oh yeah, I was asking Randy, how many races did we win over there? And none of us could come up with an answer.
Well, and that's the problem. There is no record of those races anymore. Where we still have the wall review, and I can find out everybody's stats. But when it comes to New Egypt, I really can't find stats on the wins over there. And I do remember you winning over there quite a bit, and that was a cool little racetrack, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. And the other part about that was it kept you racing, and it was like a financial aid almost. It was another close track. You'd very seldom tore a car apart. And a lot
of people say they would go over there and race to make money to go race Wall on Saturday to buy their tires. Money they made at New Egypt.
Yeah, and the old 2552 Goodyears with the real rubber in them and stuff. If you had a halfway decent tire from Wall, you didn't have to put all new tires on the car there. And I can remember jockeying tires and doing the best set that I could. And that was my first modified win over there.
Oh, really?
And then I came back to Wall and I won. And then I won a week later, I think it was at Wall.
Oh, yeah. Wow. So you actually won at New Egypt in a modified before you did at Wall Stadium?
Yes.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And that's why we have you on the RPM podcast. So all right. Tim and Josh, I'm getting ready to ask our final question. Is there anything you want to ask Tom before we let him go?
No, I think he's covered most of it. And as always, regardless of how this wraps up, you're always welcome to come back on for another future episode and talk more, because I'm sure you could go on for another couple hours if you wanted to. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure, there's been so much help to me, Josh, and I hope I named everybody that was close to me and was as dedicated as I was when we were racing. And if
You
I
always
didn't,
had a dedicated pit crew, and I always thought it was because of those Welsh Farms T-shirts. There were so many Welsh Farms T-shirts, and that guy gave out a lot of T-shirts.
well, we definitely did cover a lot, that's for sure. And thank you, John.
We have one last question we ask everybody, and you probably heard before. Out of all the racetracks you've been to, even now, because like you said, you do go to a lot of racetracks now, and even when you raced, what track had your favorite type of track food, and what track was it at?
This is the easiest one ever.
It's going to be ice cream.
Ice cream, Wall Stadium.
Ice cream, Wall Stadium. Josh, Tommy also had the ice cream stand at Wall Stadium.
Yeah, I used to help Tucker with that, and first turn Wall Stadium ice cream. A lot of friends, and actually Eddie Bone's wife used to help us in there. Melody Adcott, Jack Adcott, and my wife used to work in there. All great times.
Can you tell us a little bit about the ice cream business? When I know you work for Taylor Ice Cream, right? So Josh, whenever you walk into an ice cream store or even a fast food restaurant, if it says Taylor on the front of it, that's what Tommy sells, is those machines.
Okay.
When you sold the ice cream at Wall Stadium, was that a Welsh Farms ice cream, or does Taylor have its own ice cream mix?
Yeah, that was Welsh Farms ice cream mix.
Okay, made in a Taylor machine.
Correct.
Oh, so it's like the best of both worlds.
Machines?
Ask me that again, Sky.
Does Taylor make ice cream itself, or they just make the machines that make the ice cream?
Yeah, we're a specialty food service equipment company. We also make high-speed two-sided cooking grills that like McDonald's and Wendy's use, and 1,000 of retail store, mom-pop type of stores. And we do frozen cocktail machines, milkshake machines. We do it at McDonald's, Sunday, and milkshake units too. So Dunkin' Donut machines. So we do specialty food service, beverage, and soft serve, and custard, things of that nature.
Is it all commercial, or do you do anything?
All commercial.
Okay.
You told me an interesting story. Now we went from racing to ice cream because you mentioned ice cream. Tommy told me a story. I forget how it went. Maybe you can help remember. It was something about Carvel and McDonald's. Were they supposed to team up at one time?
Yeah, they had the opportunity to join forces, and Carvel turned it down.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So McDonald's wanted to sell Carvel ice cream? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
So it would have been Mick Cookie Puss.
Yes.
All right, Tom. We really appreciate having you on. You're welcome back anytime, and we hope to see you at the racetrack.
Yeah, we're all digging and waiting for those days, and like I say, hashtag think and be safe as we reopen, and hopefully we can get a race in. Do you know if that modified race at Myrtle Beach is going to be a fan event or closed for the modifieds at Myrtle Beach coming up?
I've been talking to a lot of people on the modified tour. Half the people say yeah, and half the people say no. So nobody really knows for sure.
I guess they're setting up for either or. If they're allowed fans, they're going to have fans. If they're not, though, I guess they're going to do without it.
And I was told that the last modified tour owners meeting was very vague, and they didn't tell them very much about what was going on. So I don't think they know yet.
Yeah. Well, I guess from this, thank goodness racing came on Sunday. It did feel different. It did look a little different, but Kevin Harvick won, that's for sure. And it was good to see.
We're going to talk about that when you get off the air. We're going to move on to the NASCAR stuff. But what you just said is like when I first tuned in, it was a little different. But when the race got going, it really didn't affect me at all that there was nobody in the grandstands because I'm still sitting on my couch watching a race, But then it got weird again when Kevin Harvick won and got out on the front straightaway and there was nobody there.
Right. You see it like, I wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. You see this thing. Like, who you burnouts for? You know what I mean? Well, and it's for his team and his sponsor for sure, but it is it doesn't have the same impact.
No. No, and I've been reading too on some of the smaller teams. Some people are losing their sponsorship because there's no fan in the grandstands. I mean, part of the reason these people sponsor them is it's not really to advertise to the TV people. They do it for like bringing their customers to the races, bringing their clientele to the races as a hospitality thing. And some of these smaller sponsors are pulling out because now like they can't use it as a sales pitch to or a thank you to their customers. So it's a weird deal now with the sponsorships side of it too, you know.
But I will say, and I know you guys will confirm this, that as much as the crowd kind of matters when you look at it on TV, when you're in the car, once you're down on the track, that crowd disappears.
Right.
I mean, it becomes like tunnel vision.
It really didn't bother him during the race, but when he got out and there was nobody there, you can see in his face, he got like depressed, like real quick. He looked up and there was no one there, you know?
Yeah.
I can remember watching the people in the grandstands coming off of floor. Actually, I can remember when I passed Martin Truex Sr., what was it, 2 laps to go in a Garden State Classic, and I thought there were still like 30 laps. I didn't have radios. I couldn't afford them. It was radios, right? And I never saw, you know, the right flags or anything. And I could hear the fans screaming, racing with 2 to go when I passed Martin.
But you know what? You say that now. Back when you raced it, it seemed like the fans were more into it back then. I remember, like, if somebody wrecked somebody on the racetrack, when they came back around the front straightaway, they were getting hit with beer cans and ice cubes, and people were throwing stuff at them. You don't see the fans don't seem that passionate anymore, or maybe they grew up and they.
There is a difference. There is, you know, when you look at the orange or the yellow jacket time eras, right? Everybody with Charlie Kremer, Gil Hearn.
Oh yeah.
And you could hear the emotions. And I can remember just before we took over the Speedway, I think Jamie Tomeno was driving the overhead door car, or not overhead door.
Garage Door Express.
What was it?
Garage Door Express.
It was a photo. It was a photos car. Yeah. And it was a mad car. And he came back, and I can remember he started like 4th, and they took off, and he ran around, and he got in the front. And not one person stood up and like there was no emotion. And I go, Tomeno, he's made his living here. I mean, his
no one's excited that he just took the lead.
You can't tell me they're all new people there. You know them. But
right, Tom, I know I told you this was the last question, but I just thought of another question because it's kind of something me and my wife fight about. You have won a lot of big races. We mentioned all the Turkey Derby wins, Garden State Classic, stuff like that. Where are those trophies at nowadays? Do you still have them, or is it something you gave away or thrown out, or your wife won't let you keep them in the house?
You know, I've been asked.
Let me put it this way, Tom, before you answer. I have a rule at my house. I'm allowed to keep my trophies in the house for that year.
Yeah.
As soon as race season's over, they got to go out of the house and into the garage.
Yeah. Well, I used to grow tomatoes on them, plant them upside down, and I have a couple of my Uncle Elsie's and Aunt Pat's house, or now Scotty's house, McLaren's. I know in that garage, and that's the only ones I really know of.
Really? You don't even have like your championship trophies or nothing?
No, my kids hate me for it.
You know, that'd be so cool to have, you know.
Yeah.
And back when you were winning the races, I mean, your family knows trophies anyway because your brother owned Walt Jarrow trophies in Farmingdale. But when you were winning, they were like real trophies and they stayed together. Now they're mostly plastic and they do start falling apart after a while.
Sure. Hey,
I was just wondering, did you ever? I know some people you even raced when. I don't know if you see the wreaths they give out at Turkey Derby now, but they ain't half as good as when you won the Turkey Derby. I was just wondering if you ever kept your wreaths too.
No. You know, one thing I didn't talk about my dad, and I'll just leave it all in that. If it wasn't for my dad, I would have never raced. He always kept me straight, always kept me in the right line, let me go where I wanted to do, and never really dictated anything. But without him, I didn't know how to turn a wrench, you know, when I first started this. And I couldn't have done anything without him.
Yeah, I know. Your dad was always great to us kids, too. I mean, not only did he work on your race cars, but if our bicycles were broken, he got home, he would come over and fix them and stuff like that. He was just a very hardworking guy, you know. He'd come home from working on heavy equipment all day and working on our bicycles or helping you in the garage with the modified,
Yeah. He builds hot rods down in Bedford, Virginia.
Oh, really? He's still working on cars?
Oh, yeah. He's got a 27 Chevy touring car. There was only 3 of them in the country. And I said, they're just not worth anything. I'm going to build a hot rod out of it. And
really?
A few different hot rods. Yeah.
All right, Tom. We really appreciate you coming on, and we hope to see you at the racetrack soon.
You bet. Thanks, guys. It's been a blast.
Thank you. Stay healthy. We'll see you soon.
Green flags. Bye-bye.
Hey everybody, this is Sam Ballard from the RPM Podcast. Planning an event and looking for a great time? Go no further than RC2U Racing for all your portable family entertainment. RC2U turns any occasion into a competition. Check them out online at rc2uracing.com.
And we're back. Part 2 of episode 174 of the RPM Podcast. We want to thank Tom Mauser, the Farmdale Flyer, for coming on. He gave a great interview. It was very enjoyable. One question, we asked him a lot of questions, but of course I did forget to ask him one question. I just texted him to ask him this question. I always wanted to know where the name Farmdale Flyer came from. It's pretty cool. I was from Farmdale. He was a fast driver, Farmdale Flyer. I wasn't sure. I know one of the track announcers gave it to him, but I wasn't sure which one. I did this text message him and asked him where the Farmdale Flyer name came from, and he said Jeff Gravatt. Jeff Gravatt gave him that number, and it stuck. And he used to have a lot of cool T-shirts with the Farmdale Flyer on it. I always thought it was a really cool name.
Now, I get that confused with somebody on the wall message board who I think doesn't like me. It's like no matter, we can get like 30 upvotes on an episode of this, and there's always 2 dislikes. There's 2 people that hate it just because it's me, and it's the Farmington Flyer.
That guy's still on that message board.
Josh, I haven't been on that message board in years, and that name was on there 5 years ago when I was on there.
Yeah. I think that's one of the ones that just can't stand me. So, whatever. I mean, haters, or whatever.
Tommy always had that cool nickname, the Farmdale Flyer. I always wanted to know where that came from, and I forgot to ask him, but I did message him. It came from Jeff Gravatt. It's one of the cool racing nicknames. All right, so we got back to real racing this week in NASCAR World. Darlington went green with no fans in the grandstands. We touched base about it a little bit with Tommy. It was a little weird when we first tuned in and they showed that everything was empty. The parking lot was empty, no campers, nobody in the grandstands. But once they threw the green flag, it seemed fine
it went back to normal very quick with Ricky Stenhouse wrecking on the first lap.
I can't believe that happened. I cannot believe he wrecked on the first lap. They haven't raced in months. They all drive down to Darlington to race. There's no practice, no nothing. All this anticipation that the world's getting back to normal and we're racing again. He doesn't even make one lap and he wrecks, and he's known for wrecking,
that was the sense of normalcy that people needed.
Things got real normal when that happened, right?
Yeah. Which
I tell you what, I heard an interview with him and he's depressed over it and he can't wait. But a good thing is he gets to go back racing Wednesday. He doesn't have to wait 7 days to go racing again. In a couple of days, he's going to get back in the car and hopefully
it's a redo at the same track, right, Scott?
And you know what the real insult to injury about him wrecking that car? A lot of these people are using the same car again. You know what I'm saying? And now he can't even bring that car back.
Are they swapping motors?
I don't think they have to because they want that 550 horsepower engine.
They didn't practice. They didn't qualify. They didn't put it in miles.
They didn't qualify, and they did shorten these races up. And the reason they came up with these laps and miles is because the engine builders are saying that you can get 2 races out of them with those type of miles.
But that will be interesting with 10 to 15 laps to go if they start.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. I think they'll be fine.
Well, I don't know. It all depends on how they drive and how they push them. I mean,
well, then again, Harvick did burnouts with his. That wasn't the smartest idea.
Well, no, Roddy Childers, his crew chief, they come on and say, go ahead and celebrate a little bit, but be careful. We might use this car again, because it ran so good. The only reason why some of these teams are thinking about going back with a different setup is because it's going from a day race. They race in the day this Sunday, and then Wednesday is a night race, so that might give it a little bit of a setup. But if I was Kevin Harvick, I'd take that car home, change the oil in it, change the valve springs, clean it up, vacuum it out, and repack the wheel bearings and come back with it because that car was hooked up,
Yeah, I change those aluminum end plates on the axles too, right, Scott?
So you don't spit it axle out. Yeah.
Before we get too far ahead of it, you said about the beginning of the race. The only thing that was I liked and the girls like the national anthem and the flyby and all that stuff. That was didn't hype you up for the race. Do you know what I mean? But then again, you were already hyped up, I guess, because you haven't seen a race in a month and a half. But I missed the beginning of this stuff.
Well, actually, this is not something I planned on bringing up, but you talk about the flyover, and I know in our area they've been doing the flyovers between they had the Blue Angels and the Thunderbirds go over, and then there was one with it was one of the refueling tankers go by. I was in Long Branch, and I just caught the tail end of it was one of the tankers and a couple, I guess, F-16s went by. But I think it was just yesterday, as of the time we're recording this anyway, they have the Snowbirds, I believe they're called, in Canada. One had
someone's house or something?
One had a flame out, and they ejected, but one of the commanders was killed. I think they ejected possibly too low. And the chute didn't open full. I don't know the exact details, but there was two people in the jet. It flamed out right on takeoff, and the jet crashed into a house, and one crew member was injured, and the other was killed. And that's like, is this kind of stupid to be pushing these jets all over the place when we don't really need to? I mean, is it really that worth it to show support for our heroes? I'm going to.
I learned about flyovers, Josh. They just don't do flyovers. It's actually they're doing it anyway. It's usually a maneuver anyway, and they just kill two birds with one stone. You know what I'm saying? Like they're doing a practice run anyway, and by them timing it perfect to the national anthem is a training thing for them. And they're usually on their way to somewhere.
So they can practice maneuvers, and then if they just happen to time it right to fly over a track at the...
Well, that's part of the maneuvers to,
they're
going to be in a certain place
somewhere and pass at the right exact time.
Yeah.
So if they had to drop a bomb exactly at 12:02.
Right. Some of these flyovers, they can be taken off from Georgia and flying to Philadelphia, and they got to time it perfectly to fly over this racetrack as the person singing the national anthem.
Yeah, and that could be said. Now, I will say I remember
back in the day, like taxpayers are complaining, "Oh, we're paying for this flyover," and they're like, "No, it's actually a training thing."
We just happen to throw in this one element of it at this time where.
And I heard that's why sometimes it's different planes too, because it's different practices for different type planes.
Yeah. Well, I've gotten free air shows while going camping before down by Warren Grove, with that shooting range and everything down there, which was kind of cool. But something I do take a little bit of issue with, and this is a little bit more broad than just NASCAR, so I'll make it brief. They called it the Real Heroes 400 or something.
Like the doctors and stuff, right?
Yeah.
Doctors.
The thing is, I feel like so many people feel like, oh, well, we're calling them heroes, so we're good, and we can go back to complaining about everything, like as though they're, doing something to help the cause, kind of a thing, by just calling them heroes. Like, no, that doesn't help them pay their bills.
I think NASCAR really went overboard. Being so safe, like wearing masks. Like, why was Kevin Harvick wearing a mask in Victory Lane when he's standing there by himself? Like, they went overboard so people would say, "Oh, it's okay, NASCAR did everything."
And I have a comment on that. One of the things I was very curious to see, and a lot of teams dropped the ball. Now, there's two. I'll get to the other half of this, but dropped the ball. I was curious to see how many teams actually had logos on their face masks.
Ooh,
and
not many did.
The only two that I caught that did was Smithfield. They had Smithfield across the front of them, and then Team Penske had a little Team Penske logo on the side of it. Now, I mentioned to a couple of my friends, and some of them had angry people like Josh, who's got to be angry about everything, said that's disrespectful because you're trying to make money with your name on something that you're doing to be.
Yeah, I can see that.
To healthy.
It's a pandemic. You shouldn't use it as a
I say hell with it. I grew up with NASCAR racing where they put that name
I have a feeling
everywhere.
by Wednesday they're going to have logos all over their face masks.
I wouldn't be surprised. And that, I mean, to me, that's just that's really hardly any different. Well,
that's what I was getting at. Now, with that said, Josh, do you agree or disagree with that?
I mean, I'm sure there's a few Karens out there that want to complain about it. I don't think that's that big of a deal. I mean, it's better than asking the pit crew guys to have the logos tattooed on their face.
I mean, if I gotta go back to Wall Stadium, I want a cool one.
If you gotta wear one, it might as well be cool.
I want a Scott Riggleman one or a Jimmy Blewett one. You know what?
Yeah.
One funny thing right at the beginning of the thing, Blake Shelton tweeted, the grandstands at this NASCAR race looks like the grandstands at my last concert.
I'll give him credit for that. I did see that. That was funny. But honestly, like the announcing was the same as we saw with iRacing, as we saw previously before any of this happened. So, I mean, it felt pretty natural. And honestly, one of the topics is how empty the grandstands have been. So we're still talking about how empty the grandstands were.
Yeah. But I think like Jordy, those guys, they could have been there. They could have been in different booths. You know what I'm saying?
But they could have been there, but they did a fine job by not being there. So why be there? You know what I'm saying? Yeah, I think it was exaggerated of them trying to, protect themselves from the COVID. You know, it's like they were doing stuff that was
like talking to
over the top. You know,
he spotted for that race, obviously, and they weren't allowed. They drove into the grandstands, right behind the grandstands.
Well, that's funny because Matt Kenseth, it's the first time racing for this team, and he still says he still hasn't met the team.
Yeah. And they didn't even let the drivers sleep in their campers overnight there. They weren't permitted to be until the day of the race.
Wow.
They didn't even let Tim. They didn't even have their interior guys. They call them weren't even allowed to put their drivers' helmets and stuff in the cars. The drivers had to do all that all themselves. Like they had to carry their own
Joey Logano showed everything that in his camper. He had all his stuff in his camper with him.
And you know what? It goes to show you don't need all these extra people, and you can save money by not having them. You know.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Scott, I mean, other than maybe you doing Nancy a favor by putting her gear in her car for her, I mean, you've done it by yourself and there's been no problem.
All the time, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's one of those things where it's almost like creating a job just to create a job kind of a deal. It's weird. Oh, something else, just to move along a little bit. Stage 1. Almost won by Jimmy Johnson, which, I mean, we haven't seen him up front in a while.
Just getting ready to message Sam Ballard and say Jimmy Johnson's going to win the stage, and I was just getting ready to hit send, and he wrecks. I can't believe that happened either. It's like the two guys that have been struggling the most struggled in this race as well.
He just ran up on that guy too quick. The guy he misjudged that.
Blaming it on the lap car.
And that was just... He just drove up on.
Well, if you saw the way he twitched, kind of got into the wall, and the back end twitched and clipped.
Yeah, it was a perfect storm. The guy slowed up a little bit. He was slow to begin with, and.
But the insult to injury there is Jimmy Johnson really didn't have to pass him. Like he could have followed.
He could have laid back, yeah.
Yeah. And I heard Jimmy Johnson's little interview on his own private Twitter after that too, and he's beating himself up too, and like he says, at least he doesn't have to wait 7 days. He'll be back there Wednesday to try to redeem himself.
At least he didn't blame his spotter.
No, he didn't. He could have blamed his spotter on that one. The guy was right in front of him.
I'd be like, he could have told me he was going slow.
Yeah, that's true.
I agree. He could have laid back or whatever. And the thing was, he went to the inside, and just the way that back end twitched and kicked into his front end and sent him around. It was frustrating. I mean, I was in disbelief watching it. That's all I can say.
It was a little heartbreaking too, because I pull for Jimmy Johnson because he's an older driver and he's going through a little bit of a slump, and I would like to see him pull himself out of it. And I thought this race he was pulling himself out of his little slump, and then he put himself right back into the slump. All the Hendrick cars were fast.
Yeah, they were.
But then after Jimmy Johnson wrecked, a couple of them had tire problems as well. So who knows? Maybe later in the race he would have had a tire go down anyway. You know what I'm saying?
Truex was having some problems early on, kind of dropping. I mean, he got Kyle Busch flew right past him, and that goes.
Truex battled back and finished well, though.
Yeah, Kyle Busch had an up and down day. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, his crew screwed him for failing tech twice in the morning.
So and then it seemed like he would work his way up to like the top 10, and then the caution would come out, and then he would be like 17th again. So I think they might have had problems on pit road also that we didn't hear about.
I tell you what, Ryan Newman ran good too for his first race back. He was running up in the top 10 for a while.
Yeah, I kind of feel bad for him. You know what the cheer would have been like for that guy if they would have. He kind of got screwed out of that a little bit.
That's kind of like the Cinderella story right there. It would be, but just seeing him back and running well at all was, I mean, considering how bad it was, that was good to see.
And Matt Kenseth ran well.
Yeah, that was my next thing. Was Kenseth?
How impressive is that? He hasn't raced in like 18 months. Someone said, and for him just to jump in a car, and it's a Chevy. He's been racing Fords and Toyotas.
And he's not that young anymore.
And he's jumping in at no practice, no qualifying, no nothing.
Yeah, that's a good point, Tim. I mean, as he's getting older, and I mean,
he's 47 now.
Now, I don't know if you guys picked this out, but there was apparently before Kenseth, there was a talk with Carl Edwards.
Yeah, I guess Carl Edwards was the first one asked, and he actually turned it down.
Yeah, I thought that was a little surprising.
Carl flat out said, "No, I'm not going to drive it. Call Matt."
He must have got paid. Everybody said he got paid a good sum of money to stay away. That must have been a hell of a sum of money.
Yeah, I'm hearing he had a head injury like Dale Jr. and his wife's like a doctor like that, and his head injuries were not worth it.
Right.
You better go feed Nancy. You're yelling at
the cat.
Yeah, I expected more from Kyle Busch because of them not having any practice and qualifying. Like he's the kind of go out there and drive with the seat of his pants, and he just didn't get it going.
Even as much as he'll complain about something wrong with the car, he can still make it work and drive really well. Right, Tim?
Yeah, and I wanted to mention too. Not because he's a modified guy, but Ryan Preece ran really well.
But he didn't have the finish, man. He was running.
He can't seal the deal.
Yeah,
I don't know if it's.
I think he does. Someone posted, he loses 5 spots every time he pits too.
Yeah, he does. But he ran really well.
He needed a few good runs in that car too. There was a few guys that had good runs that normally don't run good. Tyler Reddick in the Richard Childress car, he had a good top 10 finish, and John Hunter Nemechek. They're saying
he went well.
That's the first top 10 finish for that team in like 5 years that wasn't on a super speedway.
Wow.
But he had a good run too.
I was trying to think if there's anything else notable that we want to hit on with that.
Just let's do the top 10 only because we're going to be right back at it Wednesday with the Cup guys. So give us the top 10 of that Cup race.
All right, so Kevin Harvick, Alex Bowman. Now, didn't Bowman just tweet out that he had a contract extension?
Yeah, he signed on through 2021 now. So he signed another.
Okay, which I mean, not that he's bad, but I'm a little surprised only because I don't think he's, I don't think the win column is as full as it should be.
That's exactly why I think they only gave him a year. Standard contract is usually 3.
Okay.
I think they're going to say, all right, you got one more year to step up your program.
They're also saying, I mean, Alex Bowman did win this year. I think he won the last race before we went to this COVID stuff. Hendrick also said they're not blaming him for not winning. Their cars in general haven't been good. And now Hendrick cars are getting better and the Chevy Camaro's getting better. So they're going to give him another year extension to see what he can do. And he did fine at Darlington. He was the highest finished in Hendrick car at Darlington. So.
Okay. Yeah, I just think this is his wake-up year. He's got this year, and then we'll see where he goes.
People were saying that when I was listening to NASCAR radio today, but they were also saying a lot of these guys are only signing one-year deals now. Teams are only doing one-year deals now because they don't really know which direction the sport's going, and where the money's coming from. So they're starting to say, like, even for like the top drivers, the 5-year contracts are a thing of the past. Like a 3-year one's going to be like a long one now. You're lucky if you're going to get 2.
Okay.
This might be a trend that they're going to 1-year contracts.
That's going to shake up a lot of things, I'm sure. Now, in third, we have Kurt Busch, who started fairly well back in the pack.
Yeah, he ran real good. He's going to be my pick for Wednesday. I'll say it right here. I think Kurt Busch is going to win Wednesday when they go back for the night race.
Okay. Then we had Chase Elliott, Denny Hamlin, Martin Truex Jr., Tyler Reddick, Eric Jones, John Hunter Nemechek, and then Matt Kenseth, as we talked about, finishing 10th after not having been in a car. Or now they did say he was in good physical shape from running marathons and stuff, just like Jimmy Johnson is known for doing.
Hey, you see how fancy the inside of these Cup cars are getting? I don't know how good a shape you need to be anymore. The cars are getting so even Nancy was looking inside the car. She's like, Scott, you see the dashboards now? And they're like road race cars inside now,
Well, I would say fighting the steering wheel is still something.
Yeah,
but,
I mean, don't get me wrong. It's still tough to run a 400-mile race anyways. It's tough to drive your street car 400 miles, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
But the cars are getting so much better. And, he went from, last time he was in a Cup car, they had 800 horsepower. Now they're down to 550 horsepower or something like that. So it's probably, not driving that much to him, you know what I'm saying?
Where did Hot Pockets car finish?
I think he was 30th there.
Wait, who am I looking for again?
Joey Gase.
30th.
I think that's his best run all year, right?
I think he had a 28th once. I think that was the best one we had him at. 30's not bad. I mean, he's usually like a 30.
He started 32nd, so that's up 2 positions.
All right.
So,
Okay, so that's that NASCAR race. Tuesday night. It was scheduled for 8:00, but I think someone was saying that they're moving it to 6 p.m. now. The Tuesday night Xfinity race, only because there's a chance of rain later in the night. So I heard they're starting the race 2 hours earlier.
And I'll have to check, and if I confirm that, I'll post it. Go ahead, Tim.
Just a side note: the only driver who's going to race all these races is Kyle Busch.
That's so cool.
Wait, explain that, Tim.
He's racing all these races.
Yeah, he's racing 11 races in 7 days or something, or 7 races in 11 days.
And the only other person that's ever done that is Richard Petty, I think they said.
Yeah, back when they used to run midweek shows and stuff like that. I tell you what, for me, I love this schedule. I mean, here we are. We watched a race Sunday night. Now we got another one coming on tomorrow night. Another one Wednesday night.
I know they're doing the best they can, and I'm not complaining. But would you rather see them go to a different racetrack, or are you okay with them going right back to where they were?
I don't know.
Within the same week, I'm okay with it being. It's almost like a doubleheader.
Right.
I almost feel like this is going to be the test for Pocono. Because Pocono's doing that, right? 2 days.
Yeah. But I think this is also one of those things where we have extenuating circumstances. So I think a lot of people are
the only way they can do it.
Yeah,
and saving money because they can use the same car and go back. They don't have to build another car. Like Tommy Baldwin started his little Cup team again, and he showed up with an enclosed trailer like we would use on a Saturday night at Wall Stadium and a dually in one car. I was surprised not to see his name on the entry list for Wednesday night. I don't know why he went this race Sunday. He's not going back Wednesday because he's already qualified and everything. They only have 39 cars on the entry list for Darlington when they go back Wednesday night.
Well, I'm going to throw an extreme example out and saying that, if you ask the cars or the teams to go to Darlington this past Sunday, which everything was done in one day,
right?
Then go out to Sonoma, all to come back. It's just.
Well, no, they don't want people on planes. They don't want them traveling. They're just got a little radius where states are allowing these racetracks to race without fans, and that's all they got to work with. So right now they couldn't even go to Martinsville because Virginia was shut down, and they couldn't go to Richmond. Yeah,
and I think Delaware was also shut down, so Dover's probably out of the question. But they're doing Darlington, Charlotte is
right.
So they're trying, and they did say they're trying to keep it close to the team's home base to make it
stay at home. It's a soft opening, just like the states are opening.
Yeah, and I'm okay with it. And whether they should normally do Darlington and then Darlington like this, I don't know. But I think with this year, the way things are going, it doesn't bother me. I mean,
it doesn't bother me. Better than nothing. Better than iRacing. All right, guys, let's keep moving here.
So let's go into the local segment. I added this in because Scott made a post the other day about Toby's Cup.
That was going to be our recommendation.
Yeah, reviews and recommendations.
Oh, okay.
Good, Scott.
The Phillipsburg area is most famous for, they used to have the Phillipsburg Mall Show in Phillipsburg, New Jersey. It was a big mall show, huge mall show. It was mostly Flemington cars, a lot of dirt cars from like over in Grandview and up in the Nazareth area, and a lot of the tracks would go there. That mall show, Josh, was so huge it used to run like 7 days. Like,
Wait, are you talking about like the Phillipsburg Mall itself?
Yeah.
Yeah, yep.
Because that's on the verge of closing. Like
it's closed.
It's
closed.
Been,
they actually
been the verge of closing for like 10 years. Yeah.
Yeah, it finally completely closed down. Well, you pass Phillipsburg Mall going towards Pennsylvania, and you go around that sharp bend where Route 57 comes into Route 22. Before you get to the bridge that crosses over the Delaware River, right on the right-hand side, there's a very, very small hot dog stand called Toby's Cup. It's just as famous as Hot Dog Johnny's and everything. I always wanted to stop in there, but they got a very small parking lot. It's hard to get the tow truck in there. I had to pick up a machine up there. So I said, well, let me give it a shot. I'm going to try to get in there. And I drove by, and there was actually room for my tow truck this time. So I finally got a chance to stop in there and try Toby's Cup hot dogs, and they were really good. It's famous because it's real small. It looks like a cup, like the building's real small. Like only one or two people can fit in it. And,
right.
And I finally got a chance to stop in there, and the hot dogs were very good. They had a stack of Grandview Speedway schedules handing out and stuff like that. So if you're ever in the area on Route 22 in Phillipsburg, always stop in there and check that place out.
I think we actually head up. Well, they have the Delaware River Railroad excursion, and they have the Thomas the Train, like an actual life-size train. Done up as Thomas with the face and all that, and we take Bryce to that every year in Phillipsburg, and you ride along the Delaware River. You go under one of the main one of the big highway bridges and stuff.
Very historic, even on the Pennsylvania side, on the eastern side, it's pretty cool up there.
Oh, actually, to get home, the best way is for us when we leave. We go over that little rinky-dink bridge. And then we make a right to go, I guess, north, and then we hop on that. It's like a stop sign, and then you got to floor it to get up to speed on that bridge on 22 going over the Delaware.
Yeah. Yep.
So, but it's a beautiful area. They actually there's a Crayola experience thing there.
Crayon factory.
So hot dog, was there a special like with pickle?
I asked for relish, and the guy almost ripped my head off. They don't have relish for hot dogs there, but I got he offered to put a pickle on it, but I didn't want a full-size pickle on my hot dog. I could do a hot dog.
No relish, no French fries. What else?
I don't know. I got a regular hot dog with onions and mustard, and it was good. It was a really good hot dog.
Sounds like a soup Nazi at this place, Josh.
And I asked for a root beer soda, and he had A-Treat soda. Everybody knows
that's a thumbs up. Yeah.
Yeah, I like the A-Treat soda, and that's what I got. It was good.
Oh, I got a birch beer.
Ooh, I haven't had one of those in a while.
Well, once I seen he had A-Treat soda, but I already asked for a root beer, and he already had it.
Still have the horse collar?
Blackberry soda.
Did it have the horse collar on it? Was that the one that
you know what? It's got the Pennsylvania Dutch sign on them now. On the root beer cans now. All right.
Was it good? Was it good?
Yeah, it was real good. It was probably the best hot dog I ever had. Like I said, he deep fried it. It was good. It was just as good as Hot Dog Johnny's, if not better.
Okay. I'll have to check that out next time. Again, we're scheduled to go at some time in the summer, but who knows what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So that's really all I have for the local stuff. So just as far as reviews and recommendations, do you have anything?
Tim wanted to mention something about the Tom Mauser kids that race at Wall Stadium in the sportsman division. Tim, what did you want to tell about them?
I sent it to you guys. You know how like people can't graduate and kids can't go out for their birthday parties and stuff. And my girls have actually missed a couple parties and they're upset about it. Apparently, they bought their race car. One of their fans, little kid, goes to races every week in, week out. Had a birthday party and they couldn't have a birthday party. But for his birthday, they bought their race car to his house and put it on his front lawn.
Oh, that's cool.
That's really cool.
And then people rode by and were beeping the horn for the kid and everything.
I also heard too last year the kid came to the racetrack for his birthday and
they won. Yeah,
they finished first and second.
Yeah, yep. So they did that for that. I thought that was pretty cool to do that.
Okay. I think we did share that on the page.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Tim.
Other than that, I've had people. I guess just the drivers we've been talking to have really been going over well. I've had a couple of people ask me for different people. A lot of people want to know why, because Jamie Tomato is my favorite race car driver. Why hasn't he been on yet? For the simple fact that he's only a phone call away. I know he'll do it whenever I want. We've already talked about it. Some people want Donnie. A lot of people want Donnie Ling Jr. I don't know how to get a hold of Donnie Ling Jr. I was going to think about getting a hold of Vic Gleason to see if he could get a hold of him. If anybody knows him,
message us. Yeah.
I want to get Bill Verwise on here, the street stock guy.
I have a few people that I can probably talk to and line up. We can only do so much, and there's plenty of time.
Thank you for the input. More input, the better.
Yeah,
I also want to thank Randy Goss. He helped get Tommy Mauser on the show, and it was nice that Tommy called me on Sunday and said he'd be willing to do the show, and it was great Tommy coming on. All right, guys.
Well, it was a lot of fun. Okay, I just have one thing I want to recommend. It's called The Dead South. It is a folk bluegrass band. They have a couple songs that have become very popular on YouTube. They're just I'm not a huge country music person, but I do enjoy some bluegrass, and this is folk bluegrass. They're just fun. They're an entertaining band, so check out The Dead South. They have there's a handful of things on YouTube, and you'll enjoy it. So that's my recommendation. Now we'll head into what have we learned today.
Before you go into that, if you want to talk about country music a little bit, I've been listening to Ryan Upchurch. He goes by Upchurch. He's like a country rap type singer. He's got a funny song about racing, and I think it's called like American Made or American Built or something like that, and it's about short track racing a little bit, but he's at a short track singing this song about American built cars, and while the four cylinders out on the track, and it's all foreign cars out there.
God. That actually
the big mistake. This guy isn't really knows what he's talking about here.
That or the producer of the video had no idea, or that's the best they could get.
Josh, you got to find that and put it on the Facebook page.
I tell you what, Ryan Upchurch, great songs. He even does a lot of cover songs. He did like Alice in Chains, Nutshell, like a lot of those songs. That's how I first started listening to him, and then I started listening to his original stuff. He's really, really good. Ryan Upchurch, check him out.
Yeah, I was surprised I was able to find that Tommy Mauser commercial on YouTube.
Oh, we got to post that.
I shared it already, so it should be up there. But it's funny, talking about music and race cars, there was, and this is going back a number of years, Three Doors Down. I think the song was called "The Road I'm On," and they had in the video Tony Stewart and Dale Jr. are in like Trailblazers or Blazers or something, and they end up going onto a short track and racing each other in the video. Yeah. So if you get bored, Three Doors Down, Dale Jr.
I got to. Boys, I'm going to talk about music. I only came up while you guys were talking about the girls, and he's famous now. That Post Malone. Have you heard about Post Malone?
Oh, well, let's not talk about him.
Yeah, a lot of people don't like him. He did a cover of Nirvana, which is amazing.
You know what? Howard Stern's been talking about that.
I haven't been listening to Howard, but
Howard Stern said,
me being a big Nirvana fan, it's amazing.
I almost want to think he did that song with a former member of Nirvana, or
the ones that I saw, he did not. Now there are more that some of them are bad, some of them you got to find the good ones. I guess maybe he's not so high.
Howard Stern was saying that he did, like, you know how these singers are doing like free concerts from their house just to help people pass time while they're in quarantine. Post Malone did a bunch of Nirvana songs with a former member of Nirvana or a former member of like a grunge band helped them do Nirvana songs.
Maybe since he's done the Nirvana ones that I'm talking about, maybe they've gotten a hold of him because he did such a great job.
Yeah.
Now I do know Nirvana has played with Beck. They've done a lot with Beck and Dave Grohl's daughter.
Oh wow.
She covers Nirvana now. She sings for them now.
Oh, cool.
So the Beck's pretty good. Beck messes up a couple times, but he's Beck, so I'm gonna
we'll let it go.
Yeah.
Okay, that was pretty cool. All right, we'll do some more research for next week. So, Tim, what did you learn today?
I really didn't learn anything. Tommy Mauser did grow up literally across the street from me and Scott, and it brought back so many. One thing I wanted to mention to him: whenever we couldn't go to the races, like if there would be some night that, God forbid, we didn't go to the races, Tommy Mauser, at this time he was either winning or Steve Golombeski was winning the '65 CRC car. Either Tommy won or this guy won. That was it. Nobody else won. And there was a couple nights that got towards the end of the year. I guess it was probably for the championship, and we couldn't go to the races for some unknown reason. And Greg, Tommy's younger brother, said, if Tommy wins, I'll put the trophies on the dining room table, and you can come over and look through the window next morning. And sure enough, Tommy won that night, and I went over there like real early Sunday morning, stuck my head in the window, and the trophies were on the dining room table.
That was the internet back then. That's how you had to post stuff on the internet if you won or not.
All right, Scott, what did you learn?
I learned Tommy did get those Penske shocks that he wanted so bad, and they did make a difference.
Okay. Anything else?
No, that's about it. I gotta go cook dinner.
Okay.
What are you making?
She wants hot dogs because we've been talking about hot dogs. She wants me to make.
Well, that's easy.
You got to deep fry them. That's the difference.
It's easy to make hot dogs.
All right,
Ooh,
so
that sounds good.
So today I learned that cross-threaded shock bolts do work. I learned that race car drivers are the blankety blankest stupid people.
Did he think that Tommy was Neil Bonnet or something when he was yelling at him, or was he just yelling at Tommy?
He just knew he was a race car driver, and he was just saying all race car drivers were stupid.
Okay.
Yeah.
I learned that we were very close to Mick Cookie Puss. And I learned that Scott doesn't like full-size pickles.
Yeah, he does. One thing I do want to say is funny. I came across you were talking about last week, Josh, how you're watching like 1965, 1977 races, and you're watching them.
Yeah.
I came across, it was like a 1975 race at Pocono. I watched the whole thing to see if anybody wrecked in the corners. And they threw the stuff over the fence to see who
I watched the 1985 ARCA Invitational race that I never knew happened at Pocono. They only had 15 drivers in the race.
Wow.
So I was doing the same thing. Every time they wreck, I wanted to see them over the fence.
The things we do during quarantine.
Feedback from them, from Scott?
Yeah, I did. They shared all my stuff on their Facebook page. And not only did the Pocono Outdoor Adventures people share it on their Facebook page, the whole Visit the Poconos Bureau shared my Facebook page.
Oh, wow.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That was pretty cool.
All
right, guys.
Yeah, so
that wraps up episode.
Go ahead,
Josh.
No, I was just going to say, make sure you stay tuned to this RPM podcast, not the other RPM podcast that just started.
Petty Motorsports started a podcast, and it's called the RPM podcast. But they do have their Nancy wanted to sue them right away, but they have their Richard Petty Motorsports logo up, and it is written out when you go on their thing, Richard Petty Motorsports. So I think we're safe there. There is other RPM podcasts. A lot of them are record ones, like the RPMs for like people that sit around and play like vinyl records and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You ever notice that?
Well, I did go through our RPM podcast YouTube page, and I commented on their video saying ahem.
When they have one episode and we're up to 174, I think it shows that we've been there before that.
Yeah, that was the point. So we'll see where it goes.
So Richard Petty wants your back at the track, boy.
All right, guys. That wraps up episode 174 of the RPM podcast. Hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next week.
Have a good one. Stay safe.
Wash your hands.
You guys are getting me in trouble tonight.